Yeah, let's give a quick shout out to Christina Applegate.
Yeah, bottles on me, long as someone drink it. Never drop the ball, fuck it, y'all thinking. Making sure the young money ship is never sinking. About to set it off in this bitch, Jada Pinkett. I shouldn't have drove, tell me how I'm getting home. You too fine to be laying down in bed alone. I can teach you how to speak my language, Rosetta Stone. I swear this life is like the sweetest thing I've ever known. About to go thriller Mike Jackson on these niggas. All I need is a fucking red jacket with some zippers. Super good Smith-O, a package of the swishers. Did it overnight, it couldn't happen any quicker. Y'all know them, well fucking me either. Point the biggest skeptic, gotta make them a believer. It wouldn't be the first time I done it, throwing hundreds where I should be throwing ones, bitch, I run it. Yeah, I swear I got this shit that make these bitches go insane. So they tell me that they love me, I know better than that. It's just game, it's just what comes with the fame. And I'm ready for that, I'm just saying, but I really can't complain. Everything is kosher, 2 thumbs up, Eva and Roper. I really can't see the end getting any closer, but I'll probably still be the man when everything is over. So I'm riding through the city with my high beams on. Can you see me? Can you see me? Get your eyes in on. Y'all just do not fit the picture, turn your widescreen on. If you think it, I'ma quit before I die, dream on. Man, they treat me like a legend. Am I really this cold? I'm really too young to be feeling this old. It's about time you admit it. Who you kidding, man? Nobody's ever done it like I did it. Young Money. This what I'ma do till it's over, 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 but it's far from over.
You gotta eat the lettuce. It's right, just straight up eat the lettuce.
It's true, Dr. Doback. You've been very cold and unsupportive of our dreams.
You wrecked my fucking boat, you goon!
Rec league, I ain't paying a ball. Y'all be string like a broke guitar, and he still put it down like a family dog. Yeah, I murder some, murder one, clean it off, Ferguson. We ain't gotta sing the same old love song. Cut a white girl with the same black gloves on. Yeah, what you saying to it? Old money looking, old money don't do it. Make her turn around and they laying like a UN. I'm only looking back if I'm looking at a booty. What's the rationale? They wanna smoke niggas when they black them out, so we acted out. Blue dream by the bouquet till I'm face on Tuesday. Can I have some? Hashtag be like, put a plus 18 on the E-right. I said what I felt, no be right. Nah, they can't hold me. Choose line, drop some. Now double dare you, I mark some. Some scorch winners, I burn artists. Gut niggas, so Kurt Bonner. Bonner got a crush on. I gotta wait in line for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got a rhyme with that. 2 true like 2 chains. Blue blood like you both gangs.
And then you sit down and you write Dale and Brennan a check for $10,000. Or I'm gonna shove one of those fake hearing devices so far up your ass, you can hear the sound of your small intestine as it produces shit.
Alright, hope you know I'm trying to see it through. Alright, 6 figures for the whip. No chance, you catch me down bad. P90, aim straight for your head. Calling on my bitch, and she know she at the top of the list. And she put up with her friends, so I tell her throw it back, then I blow it back. Drop it down low, let them know it's like that. Feel like I'm hexed, yeah, that bitch bad. Collar on her neck and her ass real fat. Tell her throw it back, then I blow it back. Drop it down low, let them know it's like that. Feel like I'm hexed, yeah, that bitch bad. Collar on her neck and her ass real fat, yeah. She keep on saying that she never had a nigga like this. Shake it up, say the realest nigga in the mix. Why they always acting like a nigga ain't shit? Talk slick, then we empty out the clip. 6 figures for the whip, bitch. You ain't gon' tell me shit. Stuck to my body, I'm the dog, she the tick. I'm the god pussy, this ain't no motherfucking facade. My niggas comfy at the top, we ain't never took a loss. Demon girls, land chain fangs, got an early fans. Fucking on a succubus, I feel like I'm devil man. Bloody when I'm up in there, harness with a pentagram. How you get a black hole independent, it was in the plan. She's fucked, yeah, same, that's my bitch. Of course works, got it tatted in my skin. Autopilot whip, black matic with the tank. Got a sucking on my dick while we bump trips. Till I throw it back, then I blow it back. Drop it down low, let them know it's like that. Feel like I'm hexed, yeah, that bitch bad. Collar on her neck and her ass real fat. Till I throw it back, then I blow it back. Drop it down low, let them know it's like that. Feel like I'm hexed, yeah, that bitch bad. Collar on her neck and her ass real fat, yeah.
Ooh, hello everybody. How you doing? Jesus Christ, these headphones do not work. I fucking hate these headphones. They work, but it makes everything sound funky. I hate it. Damn you, chef. Damn you. Hello. Welcome to another stream. Let's get this shit started. Welcome everybody. Let's say hello to some of the people here. Hello, Beaverman, Top Tomato, Hannah, Pigeon Salad, Dark Mage, Volt. Thank you guys for showing up today. Appreciate it. We are going to continue on the saga that is the dumbest fucking drama I've ever seen in my entire life. I feel like everybody at this point is just burnt out by this, but I find it increasingly fascinating as it goes, because it shows that other communities have very what's the word I'm looking for here? What are the words I'm looking for here? That they have skeletons in their closet and creators that are pretty backstabby and creepy and all around simping nature. Hello, chef. You want to say hi to the camera? Well, this is the thing about this video. This video is a complete breakdown of everything that Veronica's gone through in her life. And I want to give like a minor trigger warning to people, as much as I hate saying the words trigger and warning in the same sentence, because it's kind of cringe. If you're somebody that gets easily upset by manipulation in relationships, upset by somebody taking advantage of, I guess emotional advantage, self-harm, all those things, you don't need to watch the stream. You're more than welcome to tap out at any point. I would like to watch this video, first off, for archival purposes. Second, to show how deranged some of the people who were involved in this video, I mean, not this video, in the original Just Stop videos creation was. I feel like this needs to be understood, how crazy these people are. An example, I'm just going to bring up something real quick. So Bowblax does a full-blown retelling of the situation with LS Mark, Veronica, and another creator named Mick. Now, Mick is going to be an important person in the story. I don't really want to spoil it just yet, but Mick's a piece of shit. That is like the easiest thing I could say off the bat, is that Mick is a simping piece of shit. So FBS Diesel takes some screenshots and writes this tweet here. I like NG Artist, but a lot of the heat directed at Bowblax is ridiculous. The video is even, and he even gives everyone a follow-up. That's it. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, if creators don't want to end up news stories, stop going public. Exactly. Let's see here. Daft threw the first stone at Veronica, which you guys are going to see soon. And Mark should be able to respond, and Bowblax should be able to sum it up. Exactly. Bowblax just has an entire channel dedicated to archiving Twitter beefs or Twitter situations or dramas in general. We don't, like, commentary channels do reap the rewards of talking about other people's situations, but the thing is that a lot of the times people neglect to look at it from the objective angle that people like myself, Bowblax, Augie, everybody like that, want to talk about this stuff because we believe that a lot of this stuff is fucked. And we talk about it because it's intriguing to us. We find it interesting. And Bowblax is the least opinionated person when it comes to dramas like these, because he sits back and goes, okay, I'm going to archive both sides of this and we're going to discuss both sides. That's what Bowblax has done for years when it comes to the Twitterverse stuff. So let's see what got all these people's panties in a fucking bunch. So this Twitter account known as Tapwara, dog, what is this? Respectfully, I hope you are never near a woman. So Bowblax titles it Rice Pirate Mick Simps for Oni's GF and then gets cucked by LS Mark. That's actually a funny title because it's entirely true. That the entire situation I'm about to present to you guys is accurate to a T with that title. It's actually hilarious. That entire title is accurate to the situation. Sure, is it SEO bait? And it's based around making the title inflammatory to receive more clicks? Absolutely. But everybody on YouTube does that. I literally titled my fucking video today, Veronica responds to DaftPina and others attempted sabotage. which is accurate to the situation. Is it inflammatory? Yeah. But is it true? Also, yeah. So let's see here. This person, Chill Fortress, I saw the recent video Veronica posted, some crazy stuff. Tappy, the situation in general is really crazy and sad to see it aired out publicly. Hey, dickhead, maybe blame DaftPina and the people who created the original video and put your ire towards that, then the ire towards Bowblax, who is just covering it in its entirety. This guy's going to hate me when I cover this today. Chip, Bowblax is a human parasite. That's putting it politely. Chip, what the fuck do? You look like you molest kids with that profile photo. Anyways, Doobus Goobus, one of the topics of the Just Stop video. This shit makes me so tired. Yes, it is tiring, Doobus. It is. But the thing is that this situation was started by DaftPina, by Just Stop, by a handful of others. And one of them in particular, named Smokey, shows the level of degeneracy that went on in Veronica's life. And this is the thing I stated before. Even if Veronica was a piece of shit to Mark, that doesn't mean that should have been outed publicly in the first place. But you guys are going to see that the excuse that normally everyone's like, oh, I was in a bad place, I'm in a bad place, and we all say it's bullshit or an excuse, doesn't really apply in this situation, because Veronica was actually going through a horrible fucking time in her life, and things were complicated. And she found solace and love in Mark later. So the sheer fact that everyone's upset about this drama becoming public maybe turn the ire towards DaftPina and the ones that created the video, not Bowblax. So every single one of these people that are pissy at Bowblax, especially this retard, needs to sit the fuck down. I'll be honest. You need to sit down, shut the fuck up, and get it together. Anyways, now that we've gone over that, you guys are now going to witness the video in question that started the outrage on Twitter, exposes DaftPina, exposes Mick, and exposes somebody named Smokey, who has, and I even read it over in the original Just Stop video, her allegations against Veronica being a manipulator isn't all that's cracked up to be. At least that's from my own investigation and the situation that Veronica has brought forward here. So we're going to watch it in its entirety. We're going to give it a fair shake. And to be honest, I feel fucking terrible for both Mark and Veronica that this became public in the first place.
I never wanted any of this to be public, not because I was hiding anything, but because all of this never needed to be public. How this had become public was from a former friend of mine, Natalie, also known online as Smokey or Smoke the Show, who I haven't spoken to since March 1st, 2022. We have a strange...
Dude, she looks like the kind of person that would, like, make up lies and shit to fuck with you just because they're actually crazy. This girl radiates crazy. I think every time I see a photo of her pop up, I think back to, like, one of my ex-girlfriends that did a lot of the same shit that Smokey gets accused of doing throughout this entire video. It just gives off the vibes of, like, a crazy ex-girlfriend that's, like, out of their way to ruin your life to make themselves feel better. It's just a vibe I'm getting. It's just a vibe. It was a vibe. The second I saw this girl's face, I was like, she looks crazy. She actually looks batshit. She looks like a whore that's crazy.
History despite only being good friends for 6 months. Although I've done some very bad things that I'll discuss in detail, this person has aired my dirty laundry in an attempt to save herself and her boyfriend's public image. Together they have done equally bad, if not worse things. Twist the things that I've done into absurd stories.
Let's read these over. Nothing quite like going to a party and having a friend completely unprompted say to your face, yet another lie your abuser is spreading and attempting to set info straight gets met with, I don't want to get involved with drama to remind you of where people's morals are. Lol. Ironic coming from you, bitch. I'm getting so tired of being the bigger person to the fucking loyalist whore who came into my life last year, and after I put her above my own well-being, oh, that's going to be ironic. That's going to be ironic later, chat. And happiness put up with her manipulation and lies a year later. I have to hear she's still lying on my name. That's ironic coming soon. Veronica, keep me and my boyfriend's name out of your mouth unless you want me to post the screenshots of your husband telling me you're a serial cheater when I tried to defend you after you cheated on him and informed me so you could also informed me you also cheated on your ex and on Chris Oni. Damn, that's some serious allegations being levied by Smokey. Let's see how those hold up, chat.
To paint me as an irredeemable, abusive devil woman, while at the same time never acknowledging the bad stuff her and Mick did during all of this, such as trying to fuck my boyfriend while we were in a relationship, helped her best friend cheat on their girlfriend, and made up 2 big lies about me in an attempt to smear my name.
One of which was a pedo allegation, which was baseless and a flat-out lie. So yes, 100% false that this is remotely close to a grooming situation or a pedo situation. These individuals, Smokey especially, ran with the narrative that potentially Veronica has groomed Mark since he was 17 and she's in her late 20s. And the comments on the Just Stop video, which we go over, call her a groomer. Do you guys not understand how large of an allegation that is? That is life ruining. So Smokey, in a sense, based on the information from the Just Stop video and what we've seen updated wise, and I give Just Stop credit for kind of taking accountability for his situation involving the video, but there's one person who hasn't said shit. Technically 3 people. Mick, Smokey, and the subject of our video, DaftPina. This is a life ruination campaign by people who wanted Veronica out of the picture, and you guys are going to see why.
For those who are unaware, a video was recently released by a YouTuber named Just Stop about me and my so-called abuse towards Mark and others. That video was vague on the details of the events that occurred, as well as ignoring the reality of the situation from June 2021 to March 2022. The YouTuber DaftPina has also had major involvement in all of this behind the scenes.
This guy, DaftPina, just know this real quick, Daft. If you see this live stream, Daft, I'm just saying it to you right now, and this is my challenge to you. You've piqued my interest, DaftPina. You and your history on this platform has piqued my interest of lolcow status, just on the edge of breaking. You're like this close. To be honest, you could be considered a lolcow loser right now for what you did in this video. But there's something about you. There's something about you that's piqued my interest, DaftPina. I never knew who you were before this, but the more and more I learn about you, and the more and more I look into you, Daft, you're a snake. You're a snake. And if anyone thinks that it's a good idea to work with you, they just are not paying attention to the things that have been said and done. You, Daft, are a snake. And it's very apparent that you're a snake.
But only recently made that apparent. Most of the events happened in person, although I have texts and voicemails to help elaborate what I'm talking about, as well as proof that show who these people are and that these events did occur. I'll be talking about myself, Natalie, otherwise known as Smokey, and Mick Lauer, known as Rice Pirate Mick on Twitter. I was introduced to Smokey through a YouTuber friend of ours, and I had introduced her to Mick. Talking about Mick in particular is necessary to paint this kind.
Let's read this. Mick thought private matters should remain private, but I also publicly gave out private info he told me. As far as I'm concerned, Smokey involved Mick in this by publicly giving out info he relayed to her. Why is it when Mick asks to remain anonymous, he gets it, but when Mark asks, he gets a whole video with his name in the title? That's a good question. Regarding the Veronica Jelly situation, hey guys, some of you may be aware of a now deleted video that came out yesterday. My involvement and a point I'd like to clarify. There were remarks made that were wrongfully attributed as coming from Mick when they were things said to me and relayed by me. I want to make it clear, he's never spoken to any of these involved in the video making process. This has been over for him and has no relation with my desire to talk about my personal experiences as well as the toxic circumstances I both experienced firsthand as well as saw unfolding real time around me late 2021. He has always believed that personal matters should remain personal, but also believed it wasn't his place to dictate how I chose to process my experience after it was made impossible for any of this to have private closure. Because believe me, there were many, many attempts on my end for that. If there's one note I want to end on and a word of advice to anyone reading, it would be that if you are ever in a situation, whether it be a friendship or a relationship where others close to you who you know and have constantly shown to have your best interest at heart are coming to you with concerns of you being love bombed, gaslit, and manipulated, and pointing out a way a friend is treating you is not right, don't try to make excuses for them. Don't downplay for them. Take a moment to hear out those who you care about, who care about you, and examine the situation. Your friends do not want to steer you wrong. That's such a bullshit. That to me is a smokescreen. Because let's say hypothetically, she goes, take a moment to hear those who you know care about you and examine the situation. Your friends don't want to steer you wrong. You can't trust everybody. Even your good friends sometimes may or may not have motivations that are going to fuck you over in the future. That's at least how I look at it. Like, I trust my friends, my actual close-knit friends, my IRL friends, more than just as much as my own family. I love these people. But I'm not stupid enough to believe that if something does happen, potentially one of them or somebody in the community will be like, oh, look at all the awful shit he's done. Because people always have a motive. Always. You can't really, you need to keep your knit small and have like good connections and healthy connections. But as you're going to learn over a period of time, Smokey has 0 positive connections because they are the one who's the biggest piece of shit in this scenario outside of Mick.
Kind of environment that I was in for months. Smokey did not have my best interests at heart and put myself above her as she claimed she did. But also lied to Mark by telling him that she wouldn't share his private DMs when he was at his most emotional state, while continuing to give them to Just Stop for his public video. This requires a lot of context. She spun the narrative that I'd never taken accountability for my actions. So I want to take a moment here and admit what I did was not okay. I'm at fault in treating people poorly, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. I was running wild at a low point in my life. I'm currently 11 months sober of alcohol and taking my recovery very seriously.
Which, congratulations on the 11 months sober. That's a fucking tough accomplishment to make. That's a tough accomplishment. But the fact that this all happened during the lowest point of her life, she did nothing necessarily illegal or wrong, still doesn't give the credence necessary for DaftPina, Smokey, and others to have made the video in the first place. In any context, there was no need to. I don't believe there was ever a need to do that. But hey, you know what? Fuck Veronica and Mark's feelings. We have to get this information out there because Veronica's a horrible person in their eyes. That to me is psychotic. She is somebody who went through major alcohol addiction. Major. And that can ruin your life and make you do horrible shit. Now, does that completely exclude the actions that she is going to admit to later on? Not really. It's still bad, and I still feel sympathy for it. I'm not criticizing her for it. But at the same time, you made those actions, you made your bed, but you're actively doing something to better your life and better yourself and the people around you. So I don't understand what the need of the video initially was in the first place, other than people manipulating Just Stop, DaftPina included, and Smokey, to paint a narrative of Veronica in the most negative light imaginable because they had a personal issue with her. They had a personal issue with her all in all together. That is their biggest problem. That's why that video was made. Just Stop was used as a catalyst for all the bullshit that Smokey and DaftPina, and even though Mick, quote unquote, wasn't involved, all of their frustrations were put onto Just Stop's video and released by using Just Stop. That to me is the snakiest shit on planet Earth. For you to try and ruin this girl's life who's trying to better themselves.
Doing my best to privately make amends with people I have hurt and avoid past enablers of my addiction. But I also want to say that in these past 11 months, I've done nothing but take accountability for my actions to the people I have wronged, including Smokey. This was my last message to Smokey, admitting what I had done wrong in our friendship and...
All right, let's read this here. Hey, dude, I'm sorry I've been distant and not saying anything back. When you message me, I feel like you haven't been a very honest friend with me, and you have shared things I told you and haven't been a ride or die bitch. I thought you were. And a lot of me not communicating this to you left me to build up irritation and frustration towards you, where I felt solid in those feelings and justified not speaking to you at all, which is just shitty on my behalf. Taking accountability, even though there was no reason for her to apologize to Smokey, as you're going to see later on. she still apologized for her own actions, which is really big of somebody to do, especially to a piece of shit. It really started to feel like your only real agenda here was to be with Mick, and which you guys are going to learn about later. And you don't really give a shit about me or my friendship or loyalty. I can't help but feel after talking to you about this that you're just going to show off all this to Mick or blank. And you both just sit there analyzing what I mean and my intentions behind all of this. Like you always do when you have conflict with a friend. And that's what I mean when I say you've shared things I've told you. I don't feel like there is truly honesty here. I know on my part, definitely. This is something we have done. Share a confrontation we've had with somebody and discuss it and analyze it, and goddamn, it's exhausting. I know I'm partial of doing it myself, which is why my approach this time was ghosting and just taking myself out of the equation. Because ever since the breakup, it feels like everything I do is under a microscope. My interactions with you or Mick, and I was sick and tired of being involved in that world. I want to retract and not be involved with any of it anymore. Which is selfish of me, I suppose. I'm more of a selfish person than I thought, honestly. It just seems like you're trying to take accountability for your shit and distance yourself from toxic people, which you guys are going to see later on. I really don't see the reason for Veronica to say that they're selfish. You're allowed to be selfish in cases like these, especially with really disingenuous and toxic people. You can distance yourself from that and not be selfish, especially if they're doing the things that you will learn later on in this video chat. I know I haven't been a good friend to you in some aspects, but I feel you haven't been a good friend to me either. I don't know how our friendship is going to be in the future, but I wanted to do you the respect and reach out to you at the least to say this. What I know now is I need some space from you. I'm really sorry I've been a bitch and I ghosted you outright. I'm sorry I didn't say happy birthday to you. You don't need to apologize for that. And I'm sorry that I wasn't the friend you thought I was. I hope everything keeps going on the up and up for you and you get your damn money from Fan House. This is my message to Smokey.
And what I thought she did wrong in our friendship. So to say that I've never taken accountability for the stuff that I've done is a flat out lie. Mark is the true victim here. Everything else was just a group of shitty people excessively drinking and being shitty to each other.
Damn, she's got a flat ass. Who would tap that? Mick, you horny fucker. Who would tap that? The ass is as flat as mine. Jesus Christ, lady.
I'm going to start by going over the timeline from my breakup with Chris O'Neill to where we are today and how all this came to be, because this involves a lot of people and a lot of events. So going in order would be most appropriate to make this as straightforward as possible. But if there's one main takeaway from this video I want you to know, it's that for months Mick was manipulating me into getting in a relationship with him while not respecting the boundaries I tried to create between us. And Smokey was constantly self-seeking from the day I'd met her, trying to pressure men into falling in love with her through sex in the hopes of letting her live with them. All of this will—
Oh, that's fucking cringe! Hey, I want to fuck you so I can move in with you, please. I will use sex as a weapon to have you move in with me. That's some cringe shit. That's some cringe shit. That's some fucking terrible self-esteem moves right there. Maybe get a job, bitch. Maybe get a job. Maybe you should get a job, you stupid cunt. This is so stupid. I hate myself so much for feeling like this, laughing my ass off. I'm packing and just started crying because I know I'm going to be living with him like we originally planned when Blank was moving out. And the original plan was I was going to become the new roommate, laughing my ass out. And despite telling myself I wasn't just moving for Blank, the idea of living with him made me feel so stupid happy. I know I got to look at the bigger picture, and I know I need to unite my happiness, untie my happiness from him, and get over him, and do shit for me. But fuck, man, damn, holy shit, yeah. You know what? I want to fuck you so I can move in with you. That is some psycho shit. What is the movie? What's the movie where the girl starts like What the fuck? There's a movie where the husband had an affair. He stops having the affair with the girl. And then she tries to like take over the wife's life and become the wife, like changing her clothing and shit. I forgot the name of the movie, but there was a spiked dildo in it. Why do I remember that like so fucking vividly? And it's some fuck shit. This entire situation is a crazy person's delusion. This person does look exhausting, and it's gonna get more exhausting as we go. Don't think this is like the one of the worst things you're gonna hear here. This person is an actual crazy person. I think Gone Girl? Was Gone Girl the one? Gone Girl? Okay, we're going with Gone Girl. This is... Jesus Christ. Mrs. Doubtfire? No, Jax, not Mrs. Doubtfire.
Will be made clear as we go on. If you think this seems petty or should be private information, you're completely right. Much of this was already made public. I've tried to ignore my harassers, but this situation has only grown worse, and with nobody reaching out to me to clarify things in these drama videos.
Really? So nobody reached out to Veronica at all for her side of the statement involving a personal matter. A personal matter is different than a professional matter. If you get caught DMing underage fucking kids and shit, release that shit. It's free game. But a situation involving potential cheating on spouses and then reconciling, getting married, the relationship wasn't as good in the beginning, none of that. There's no reason to make a video on it. And on top of that, not reaching out to Veronica doesn't make any sense. You're not getting the side of the person that you are accusing of all of these things without significant evidence. And in Just Stop video, it shows that they did not have significant evidence. It was just word of mouth through Smokey and others, DaftPina included, who did not like Veronica. So Just Stop not taking the action to reach out to Veronica, but reaching out to Mark, that's shitty. And I know he admitted that was shitty, but come on, dude. Realistically, you should have seen the red flags from the beginning. The minute DaftPina tried forcing you to add more shit on Sonny, when DaftPina would make you write multiple drafts of the video because he was afraid people were going to analyze things and figure out it was him. There was a lot of things that should have went off as a red flag to you, even though he's your friend. You cannot get caught up in that. You need to see the red flags where they are, especially with a video with huge allegations and potential life-ruining allegations against another person that's already made up for all this shit and something that shouldn't have been made public in the first place. But I digress.
Chris and I had been in a relationship for 3.5 years. We were on and off, and towards the end of our relationship, we both knew that we didn't like where it was heading. My biggest fault in this was my lack of communication with him and my assumptions of his intentions. I assumed that Chris was trying to reach out to an ex, one in which he had cut off from me after I had demanded him to. I should mention that this was somebody who was extremely sick, and this was somebody who was also very important to him. So cutting them off made Chris feel worse. I was so insecure that I didn't care what the matter of their friendship was at the time. I just wanted him to cut her off so he could focus only on me. A friend would admit to me that Chris had been reaching out to her. This friend had romantic feelings towards me. My insecurities were through the roof, heightened more so by my excessive drinking, causing more stress upon Chris, which had made him feel, why did I cut this person off I cared for a woman who makes me feel this way? Stressed out all the time. I felt like everything was spiraling, and that I was losing the person I loved the most. My anger and irrationality had made me impulsive and self-sabotaging. To me, at this point, the relationship between Chris and I had already ended in my mind. I assumed he didn't care about my feelings, so I wasn't going to care about his, and cheated on him with this friend. I was assuming and irrational, and this is something I completely regret.
Was that a good thing that you did? No. But you owning up to it and apologizing to Chris is a good fucking start. I don't see how Just Stop, DaftPina, and Smokey have any sort of claim. Well, Just Stop I'm going to remove from the equation more because he was more or less, in my opinion, manipulated by DaftPina and it's in its entirety of that video. More like DaftPina and Smokey. Why did DaftPina and Smokey think that this video, their video, that they forced Just Stop to basically make by providing secondhand information was a good thing to do? I would assume that she already apologized to Chris, but now she's being forced to apologize to Chris publicly and make her mistakes even more public. She didn't do anything of massive significance. She made a mistake. She was an alcoholic that was incredibly self-conscious all the time and thought on a self-sabotaging pathway. There's no reason for the video to be made. And DaftPina's involvement is all the sweeter that he's a fucking snake.
Despite Chris and I breaking up, I still kept in contact with a lot of our mutual friends, Mick being one of them. On a lot of occasions...
This man looks like the creepiest simp I've ever seen in my life. Look at him. Look at him. Tell me he doesn't look like the kind of guy that would do the weirdest shit on planet Earth to get a little bit of pussy. I feel like that's what he looks like. Just saying.
We would meet up and have a drink, and he would listen to me vent about my ex. I looked at myself as a victim when talking about this, when truly it was my lack of communication and assumptions of his intentions. Before we get into the timeline of how this all came to be, I need to explain the friendship dynamic my friend and I had with Mick. There would be occasions where Mick would try to convince me to leave Chris prior to the breakup. I did tell Chris the nights this happened, so he was fully aware.
Dude, I hate people like that. Like, don't get me wrong. There's been moments where I've had to talk to friends, not even really close friends, about their relationships, right? But I never made it public. I never, like, went off and told everybody in the fucking world or, like, blasted on social media or something. But, like, if you're a friend and you see somebody in a tough relationship, you have the conversation once where you're like, you know what, man, I don't think this is going to work, or I think you should reevaluate this because this person's bad for you. You have that conversation once. And if they say, dude, I'm really in love with this person, I can't see myself without them, or it's not as bad as you think it is because you're not in this, you can have that conversation. That's totally fine. But if that person says, please respect me and my relationship, you never bring it up again unless they want to bring it up again. That is something I've held myself to for a long time. But for this specific situation, going as large as it did, is insanity to me. That this is even a video that has to be made. I feel sorry for Veronica.
Some of our mutuals would warn me about Mick and his tendencies, especially around how he treats women and alcohol. As when we would all hang out, back when Chris and I were together, Mick would constantly give me back rubs, touch my neck, and get very close to my face when speaking to me. Almost every time he was drunk. He did this to everybody, but our mutuals had always expressed that he had given me extra attention. There would be multiple occasions where our mutuals would—
that's just creepy. That's just creepy. I feel bad for women with, like, really creepy guy friends. You gotta know what I'm talking about? Like, everybody knows that one dude or girl that's, like, overly flirtatious to a level of creepy. We all have a girl or guy friend that does weird shit like that, where they're just like, I really, you know what? I don't want to actually do anything with this person, but, like, I'm gonna get really close to their face and get intimate when I'm drinking so that I can turn around and say, but I was drinking! That I really I always find those people in my life and I'm just like, I'm done with you. You're gonna be a problem later on. I always end up like at a party or something and I see that happening where it's some guy friend being too weird to the girl or a girl being too weird to the guy, and it always becomes toxic.
Would tell me his way of describing me was like I was a piece of meat to him.
That's fucking
Here's a good
gross.
example of his obnoxious and flirtatious behavior while drunk.
Those are some beautiful pictures. Very beautiful pictures. Very well done. I just can't help but see... Num, 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 num.
That is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. Holy shit. That's so embarrassing. This dude's a fucking weirdo, my God. Imagine sending a video like that to your friend that's a girl. These photos. I'm sorry, Veronica, I know this is incredibly tough for you, and I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at Mick. I gotta listen to that. I gotta listen to that one more time.
Those are some beautiful pictures. Very beautiful pictures. Very well done. I just can't help but see... Num, 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 num.
This dude's a creep. This guy's a fucking creep. This man has zero riz like Alex from Geek Club. He has zero riz.
And this is something he's willing to post on Twitter. In real life, this was much worse. All of our friends had known him years longer than I have, and have since stopped associating with him because of his drunken behavior and hostile ways of conversation. To give you an idea of what it was like, let's refer back to the 2016 MagFest panel. Mick had recently gone through a divorce prior to this panel, so to cope he got incredibly drunk, shouting at the audience and making a fool of himself, nobody knowing what to do with him.
I don't know, there's people standing. Are you guys coming in?
Stop it. You want what?
Robot voice. He's doing a really bad impression of your very good robot voice.
Ignore him.
Fair enough.
Really?
Hey,
come on, dude. Get it together.
Or you can just laugh at me.
I'm not.
Listen, I swear to God, if I'm ever on a panel like this in the future, like VidCon or some shit, right? Like if I ever get to the point in my life where I'm at a panel at VidCon and I start acting like this, you have my full permission to start fucking clowning on me for the rest of my life. Like, you have full permission. If I ever get fucking wasted on a panel, start throwing fucking papers and just pointing and screaming at everyone in the stands, you have full permission to rip me apart. You have full permission. You can clip that and archive it somewhere because you have full permission to shit on me if I act like this retard.
Laughing at you. He's blowing vape in my goddamn face.
Fuck you! What the fuck up?
Mick has clearly denounced his behavior there as anybody would, and the divorce at least made it understandable. But this was not a one-time thing. This is how he would act more often than not around our friends, eventually resulting in them distancing themselves from him. And in the 6 years since this panel, no improvement has been made, and I was witnessing what they had all been telling me. But I didn't care, because Mick facilitated my addiction to alcohol, and I wanted to keep the party going. If I could add any more weight to how Mick got when he was angry and drunk, there was a time where Chris and I had all of our friends over for a little hangout. We were joking around about how funny it would be if Burbank police had drones with handguns on it. Mick, who would...
Which would honestly be kind of interesting. Imagine drones. Imagine drones with handguns on them. I still think about that. Like, this is a conversation that I would have if I was drunk at a fucking bar. I'd be like, hey, what do you think of drones with handguns? Maybe like a flamethrower attachment? What about an RPG? I don't know if a drone could handle an RPG. Like, that's the kind of drunk combos I would have. That sounds like a fun conversation. As weird as that is, I think it would be fun.
Come over wasted already, would take this conversation seriously, trying to argue that this could never happen, to which we jokingly argue back with him that it could. Mick would escalate the situation, yelling at us and telling us how moronic we were to believe this, and frustrated that we weren't listening to his sense of logic here. Mind you, all of this was a joke conversation, yet Mick wanted to be right, and tried proving that by yelling at us. Mick left angry that night, not saying bye to anybody, and the next day would send us this little DM personally.
Okay. Imagine taking a hypothetical conversation about drones with handguns, getting drunk angry, and fucking leaving the party just to DM later with a sorry and then immediately goes back into starting the conversation again and getting mad again. I want to read this. Hey, sorry for getting heated last night. Never cool to lose one's chill, but I just left like no one was actually listening. These are what the police drones I was talking about. Obviously, yes. There are drones with guns. There are drones with missiles and machine guns. But all I want to say was that the Burbank police drones could not be fitted with guns. Though, maybe they could. From the size of them, I strongly believe they could not. I'm sure it's a non-issue, but I felt bad for getting upset, and I also felt it didn't hurt to explain why I was frustrated when I felt some folks were like, nope, you're wrong, without hearing what I was saying. Anyways, love you guys. Despite being monumentally frustrated, it's always awesome to hang with you. This is like a conversation that a fucking retard would send back. It's a hypothetical conversation, Mick. Calm down.
Trying to still keep the argument going. I sent him a video of a drone with a handgun as a joke, to where he said that this doesn't matter, yet still wanted to get the last word in. Many repeated events such as this made our friends realize that Mick was not a positive person to have in their lives, as much as he claims that he is. And they would begin to keep him at arm's length. A month after my breakup, Mick would invite me on the boat trip. He posed this as, hey, if you want to go, you're on the way down to the dock. I can swing by and pick you up. I didn't think much of this gesture, mostly that I'd never been on a boat like this before, and I had figured that it would have been nice to get out and see the ocean. Chris knew that Mick had taken me on this boat trip, and rightfully assumed that Mick was trying to be sneaky and swoop me up after this breakup. Mick would also tell our friend group that Chris was crazy to think that he was trying to date me. Chris sent Mick a strongly worded message, which at the time I felt was unjustified in assuming, but in hindsight, he was completely right. And so he reasonably saw this boat trip as Mick finally making his move on me. This is what sparked Mick and I to become closer, because now we both had a mutual disdain for Chris and would frequently shit-talk him together while making jokes at his expense. This is when I would be introduced to Smokey by a friend of mine who was a
See, the minute you start talking shit, the universe finds a way to correct it and gives you somebody who's a fucking sociopath. That's just how it works. The universe comes and goes in many different forms, and the universe brought this crazy bitch into Veronica's life, and you're gonna see why I'm calling her a crazy bitch.
Popular YouTuber. Smokey was a fan who'd become his friend.
Oh,
and at
no.
this time, she was coming into
I heard the words, a fan that became a creator's friend. Oh, no. Oh no, the sentence that ruins lives.
To stay with him for 3 months, hoping to spark a relationship with him because she was in love with him. I'll call him Edward for the duration of this video because I can't imagine that he would want any part of this. Edward asked me if he could bring a friend from Costa Rica to join us for drinks. This would be the first time I had met her. She would hear the things that Mick and I would have to say about our disdain for Chris, to which she would tell me that she was actually friendly with him. She would start shit-talking Chris with us, despite not having any reason to, and then would later make public tweets at his expense. After meeting Smokey for what could have been a handful of times, I'd already been told, not just by her, but from another close friend, that she was in love with Edward. Throughout the summer, we would frequent Fantasia. That would become our spot, and we would...
Okay. Don't be friends with fans. It never works out well. It never works out. The only time I've ever seen it work is PewDiePie and Marcia. That is the only other time I've ever seen it work. Period. That is it. Never again. Nobody fucking can handle it. Because, let's say you have 1 million subs. A shit ton of those people, not a shit ton, maybe like a good amount of them are probably fucking crazy, especially the women.
We'd drink, and we'd laugh, and shit talk. The closer Smokey and I had gotten, the more she'd express how much she wanted to be my friend. Edward and I would also hang out frequently, with Smokey staying at his home, also joining in with us. At this point, I started trusting her a bit more. I'd gotten to know her, and the fact that we could bond over the idea of being in love with somebody who didn't love us back made me feel understood, because Edward didn't love her back, which only made her want him more. She had a plan to try and fuck him while staying with him, in hopes that he would fall in love with her, and let her move in to be the third roommate.
Her plan, mind you, her plan was to infiltrate this guy's personal life. The man that she loved and was her favorite content creator, to fuck him and then move into his house. This is insane. That's an insane thing to do. That's stalker level crazy shit. Hey, I really like your content. Can I fuck you and live with you? That's the most insane shit. I doubt her pussy's that good to have her move in with you just for one time having sex. Nuh-uh.
When she fucked him, he would consistently make it clear to her that he only cared for her as a friend, which appeared to only grow her obsession. Smokey would vent and cry about Edward not loving her for months and months and months, despite him making it clear to her that he did not want her meddling in his life. She would frequently try telling him what to do, all in the hopes of him getting with her. Mainly by trying to convince him that he's in an abusive relationship with his current girlfriend, and that her and all of their friends all disapprove of them being together, that he's making a completely big mistake, all while reminding him that she put all of her effort into him. How do I know this? Because Smokey would send me all of their messages when they talk on Snapchat, wanting me to see what he was saying and sympathize for her. She even says that she loves using Snapchat on desktop because it made screenshotting private DMs easier.
Oh my god, what a snake! Who uses Snapchat on desktop? Who the fuck uses Snapchat anyways nowadays? What is... Hey, it's really easy on Snapchat to take screenshots without the other person knowing so that I can spread this information around and get what I want out of this. What's up, Psych Draws? This is so ridiculous. Hold on, I'm going to make Psych Draws a mod. But this entire situation is psycho shit. This is real psycho shit. This is the kind of shit where I think a woman is going to murder me in my sleep. This is like the biggest fear that men and women probably have in the world, is that they let somebody into their life and they end up being a complete psycho person. This is the psycho person. This is the person, the archetype, the absolute archetype of a sociopathic stalker. And I would be horrified to have this woman even remotely close to me.
Smokey wanted to be with somebody who would bring her into their world and take care of her. The summer continues, and at this point we have a little group. Me, Mick, Smokey, and Edward. Edward was going to be moving back to his home state to pursue his ex-girlfriend, which greatly upset Smokey. So
Ben, that is not passionate. That is psycho shit. Let's see here. If your partner still hung around a woman they used to fuck, wouldn't you be uncomfortable with that? Okay, let's read what Smokey has to say. She's so fake and phony, nice in her stories. When I used to look at them way back when they first started dating, I was genuinely just giving her the benefit of the doubt. Didn't even have feelings for blank yet. So I knew I wasn't being biased. She's fake as shit. Yeah, okay. Okay. Whole relationship still based on lies and secrecy. I was so mad when I found out he was lying to her about sleeping with me, both like in a bad together and sex-wise. He told me not too long ago that our last week there, he'd go out to the balcony to talk to her and pretend we were at blank apartment because he didn't want her to know the two of us were just alone in the empty blank apartment. Dude, I never said shit to him about her messaging him. I know we weren't ever dating, but it hurt so fucking much when I coordinated the Arrowhead trip with Blank after hearing him vent about how sad he was from not seeing Blank and how pushed away from them he felt the entire fucking trip. All he did was text with her, and I felt so fucking stupid. But I didn't say anything about it to him. I just swallowed that pain because I had no right to say anything about it to him. Yeah, because he didn't love you. He didn't care. You were a fling. You got fucked. Good job. You got what you wanted. You got the sexual gratification out of it, but the emotional connection obviously wasn't there. And you acting like a psycho bitch is probably the reason why your first attempt at finding love in this guy didn't fucking work. Holy shit.
So much so that I would find her in the corner of the bar crying. I would console her and reassure her that even though the summer will be ending soon, that we would all see each other for Halloween. Around this time, Mick is given $1 million from a family member for him to buy his own house. He would—
What? $1 million? Mick was given $1 million. Where's my $1 million? What the fuck's happening here? How come my family doesn't drop $1 million on my head? The fuck? No, I'm kidding. We don't have that kind of money. I'm not a fucking bastard that would beg my dad for money, but like, this is the thing. $1 million fucking dollars to buy a house. What does Mick's family do that they could just give away $1 million? What the fuck?
Would proceed to spend that money and purchase a home in Burbank. He would later admit to me that he had bought this house envisioning that I someday would be living in it with him. I was not aware of his strong feelings towards me at this time. Yet he still spent a large sum of money for a house with the intent of me living there. And just as our friend said, he had his eyes set on me. One night—
That's creepy. That is creepy. That he gets loaned $1 million by one of his family members to buy a home. And his immediate thought, according to Veronica, was the express purpose to purchase the home for her to move in with him. That is the reason, according to Veronica, that he bought the home, was for her to move in with him. And they aren't even dating. They aren't dating. They aren't in a relationship. They haven't hooked up yet. None of that shit. This dude was planting the seeds already as being a fucking weirdo to buy the house for her without being in a relationship with her. That is scary. That's scary. That's creep shit.
While helping him build furniture in his new home, we would drink White Claws with vodka in them, which our mutuals and I would call Mick tricks, seeing as he was the one to introduce this combination to us.
Does sound
During this
delicious.
night, Mick would jump on top of me, trying to make out with me, and I'd let it happen. Eventually, it would lead us to almost having sex, but because he was so drunk, he couldn't perform. Feeling confused and a little uneasy about all this, I
Yo, Mick had whiskey dick. Whiskey dick, Mick. Mick, the first rule of drinking and hooking up is you don't drink too much that neither one of you can perform. That's the first rule of drink hookups. How could you?
drove home, not because I didn't consent, but because I didn't look at him this way, and all of this was happening way too fast. At this point, I go to Ireland to meet my friend Mark. Mark and I would spend all of August exploring Ireland and talking about our passions and our lives. We grew very close during this trip, and ultimately, it ending with Mark expressing to me that he loved me. In reality, two people who I had only seen as friends both expressed their interest in me romantically, making me confused as to what I wanted. As a side note, in Just Stop's video, he says that Mark and I went out of our way to hide our relationship. But if you simply watch the Butch Hartman episode of our podcast Meeting Halfway, the very first episode, by the way, less than 3 minutes in, I point out how Mark and I had bonded in Ireland, and heavily implied that we were together.
It's very nice to meet you as well.
And you're both artists as well, correct?
We are, yes.
Nice.
We really much bonded over Fairly Odd Parents. That's like one of the biggest reasons why we were together.
I started a podcast with my girlfriend, and
So to say that this was something that I was actively hiding from the internet is a complete lie, not to mention the countless drawings that I've made of me and Mark together. While my trip in Ireland would be coming to an end.
Okay, that's a development I wasn't expecting. So the narrative that they were hiding their relationship isn't true, according to the Just Stop, according to Veronica, that they have expressly made it in their words apparent that they were in a relationship. The married part definitely underground, from what I understand, but they were together. they built a relationship together. So Just Stop and DaftPina's video and Smokey's involvement in that video already starts off with an asterisk of they were incorrect on this because they had their own confirmation biases. More Just Stop and Smokey, not so much DaftPina and Smokey, not so much Just Stop.
And Smokey and Edward would also be ending their time in LA. Smokey going back to Costa Rica and Edward going to his home state. Eventually getting back with his ex-girlfriend, which incredibly upset Smokey. She was putting everything into pursuing this guy, and everybody knew it. My flight back home from Ireland had a layover in Philly, so I decided to take a week for myself and stay with a friend of mine. I would express to this friend how I felt conflicted in the position that I found myself in. One whom I've spent the whole summer drinking and sharing fun with, and the other was somebody I felt genuinely understood me, but hadn't known longer than a year. My friend pushed me more towards Mick because he knew him, but I would choose to be with Mark instead, letting him know that I loved him too. Although I felt at the time I expressed this too soon, because I wasn't sure how we were as a couple, considering we didn't start establishing this fondness for each other until the last week of the Ireland adventure. I would come back to LA and things would continue between Mick and I as friends. Mick was completely aware that I was in a relationship with Mark at the time. And because of this, he felt that he should finally express his feelings.
Oh my God, what is this wall of text, my dude? Holy shit! He finds out that she is in love with Mark and that they are in a relationship together. So his immediate response is to write a fucking essay on how much he loves her? This guy doesn't respect boundaries just off the bat. If you're with somebody, seriously, if you find out that your crush or your love is with someone else, respect it. Respect that boundary. You shouldn't drop all of these fucking texts to convince them that they're wrong and that they should be in love with you or that you had real feelings about them first. It doesn't matter. If the other person cares for someone else, you need to respect that. Respect it. Don't force them into a corner by making the situation even more of an issue. Be an adult. Mick, in these texts, I've read them over, comes across as a fucking simp. In the worst kind of simp. The one that is attempting to steal your girl. In the dumbest way possible, but you'll see later what happens.
Towards me, that he loved me, and that he didn't know what love was until he had met me, which you can all understand is pretty inappropriate, but I understood that this was what he needed to say. Given all the tension that we had had, especially from almost having sex, I let Mick know that I didn't feel this way towards him, and I put my foot down that this wasn't a mutually shared feeling. He said he understood, but would always want me close to him as a friend, which I agreed with. Mick was completely aware that I was in a relationship with Mark. But Mick would never fail to remind me of his undying love, despite me constantly trying to set boundaries. It's established that Mark, Sonny, Edward, Ricardo, and Smokey would all be coming into LA for this big Halloween party that we were going to have together. 2 weeks passed, and my friends would come into town, staying at an Airbnb. Smokey decided rather than staying with the friends she had originally made plans with, that she would much rather stay at Mick's house until Halloween. She left January 3rd. Her intentions to coming to America this time...
Huh? So you're telling me this psycho bitch said, I'm going to come and hang out for the Halloween party, and then proceeds to not leave until January. Dude, what? That should be screaming weirdo behavior. Don't get me wrong. My door is open to people that are friends of mine, right? They could stay as long as they want. But if they say I'm going to leave by a certain period of time, get out of my house. Don't stick around longer than necessary unless we have a conversation about it. Don't keep trying to make excuses to stay at my house fucking longer. Get the fuck out!
Was to move in with a Twitter fan because they had a spare room for $300 in Las Vegas. Halloween comes and goes, but interestingly enough, on Halloween night, Edward and Smokey would find themselves ending the night in his hotel room. Smokey would then have sex with Edward in hopes of breaking up his relationship with his current girlfriend so that she could be considered. I mention this because I'd been scrutinized by Smokey for cheating myself, but Smokey...
Holy shit! Dude, this girl is a succubus. She's an actual succubus. She doesn't get what she wants the first time, so she goes out of her way to fuck the other dude and be like, I'm going to ruin your life and fuck you so that you break up with your girlfriend and be with me. Jesus.
Herself had helped her best friend cheat on his girlfriend because she wanted him to love her so badly and she couldn't respect the boundaries of their relationship. I may have been a cheater here, but Smokey was a homewrecker. Ricardo and Mark were meant to get an Airbnb together after Sunny had left, but the day before their Airbnb expired, Ricardo had informed Mark that he would be leaving early. The only person that Mark now knows in LA is me. There were other people that Mark talked to on Discord, but it never went beyond being friendly. The same day Ricardo informs Mark that he'll be all alone was the same day that I started having second guesses about my relationship with Mark. I would invite Mark over to my house and break up with him, using the excuse, I need to be alone and work on myself and focus on me. Mark says okay, not showing any emotion, and we continue to hang out with the rest of our friends that day, not really talking to each other. So it's me, Sunny, Ricardo, and Strawberry Mage, and we all decided to go see that really shitty Marvel movie Eternals. Ricardo didn't want to leave the movie theater to get a drink, so Mark and I jumped at the chance to leave. During this time, we'd sit in my car and break the silence. Mark expressing that if I really wanted to work on myself, that he would do nothing more than just support me, and that breaking
Right there, a man handles a situation like that. They're like, listen, like that. They're like, listen, that's totally fine. I'm still here to support you, and I want to still be with you in any capacity necessary. That's what a real man does. Not what Mick did. Mick is a fucking simp and a bitch. This, on the other hand, is how Mark handled it as well as he could. He loved this woman, and he wanted to be with her no matter what and give her the support necessary, unlike Mick, who tries to love bomb someone into loving them back.
Up with me for this reason doesn't make sense to him. I did what I always did, and I told the person what they wanted to hear, so we were back together. A lot of the mistakes that I had made here was not setting boundaries, not communicating, not really saying how I felt. So in a lot of these instances, I would let things happen, and I would say that things were fine, but never actually communicated what issues I had that was going on. Sunny's last day comes around, and we all celebrate at Mick's house. Mick has a ton of alcohol, and we're all drinking, except Mark, who didn't like the taste of alcohol. During this night, Mick would get extremely drunk and rowdy, making scenes at multiple points, such as attempting to call a friend to interrogate them as to why they didn't like another friend who was at the party.
Dude, that's some weird people shit. Can we all admit that? Can we admit that? Even though he's drunk, right? Like, we have to give him the credence that he's drunk. And I've called friends of mine while I'm drunk. I can't criticize that. But I've never interrogated another friend of mine why another friend didn't like them because while I was drunk. I've never done that. I've just called them and be like, hey, man, I miss you. I hope you're doing really well, bro. Like, we should definitely hang out sometime. Totally different. This dude is going on an interrogation rampage, according to Veronica, because he's drunk as shit. Mick is a bitch.
To which I would have to wrestle him for his phone to prevent him from making a fool of himself. As the night goes on and everybody's outside, except for me, Mark, Sunny, and Mick, Mick pulls me aside, earshot away from Mark, and expresses to me that despite me being with Mark again, that he loves me, and he always will love me, and everything that he does means that he loves me. Mark and Sunny can clearly hear what he's saying, but this is Mick's house, and Mark didn't feel at the time that he had any place to say anything. Mick then continues to motion to Mark saying, I don't know how long this
Oh no, how much worse can it get?
is gonna last, but just remember I will always love you. Mick—
Oh! Oh! No! No! He did not pull the card. I don't know how long this is going to last. This little thing that you have called a relationship. But I will always love you. Know that about me. No matter what happens, even if you break up with that person, I will still love you. I don't know how long this is gonna last. That is the fucking snakiest sentence ever in my entire life I've ever seen. Snake behavior. Absolute snake shit.
Mick later says a similar thing to Mark's face, saying, I don't know how long this is gonna last, but if you need to, you can always use my recording booth.
And then he
Mark was
said it to
currently making a Family
Mark!
Guy video and needed to consistently record lines, so we took him up on that offer. If Mick wants to deny ever having done these things, then here's a text to show you how much he actually recalls. He would later call me this day, thanking me for stopping him from making a fool out of himself. Mick would act more like this than he was pleasantly buzzed. When we drank hard, because our poison was Mick tricks. Vodka poured in White Claws. Add a little weed to the mix, just
I'm gonna be honest. The vodka mixed with White Claws actually sounds like a good idea if you're not an alcoholic.
so we can get a little more fucked up. Mick openly described that he wanted a party house, where the door was always open. The next couple of weeks would go by, and Mark and I are still together. He's at an Airbnb by himself near my hometown, where I would leave him there so I can go up to Mick's and continue drinking and partying with him and Smokey. Because Mark didn't like to drink. I even have a video of him drinking in Ireland, and clearly he's not used to it. Despite being with Mark, Mick would let his feelings towards me be known, to the point where I was beginning to feel like this was something I shouldn't overlook. I was given love and praise by both Mick and Smokey, with endless supply of alcohol and weed, all while being reminded that his house was my house at any point that I needed. Let me just state, I had been drinking every day towards the end of my relationship with Chris, going into the summer drinking 3 times a week with Mick and Smokey and Edward, then going to Ireland and drinking to experience the land of beer, now into Halloween and leading up into mid-November. This pattern never broke. I did not have one full week where I was sober for these 6 months. Being offered praise and affection for doing nothing, while also being rewarded with alcohol and never being judged for it, was exactly what I wanted. I never asked for Mick and Smokey to see me this way. The reality of it all was we were always drunk, and we were always shit-talking about the people who had hurt us, while upping ourselves and saying that it was us against everybody else. A classic echo chamber, but this facilitated my addicted mindset. Mick buys a dog around this time named Jojo. This wouldn't be worth mentioning if it weren't for the one conversation I had with Mick sometime after our breakup, where he admits that he had gotten this dog for me.
There are so many traps. There's so many traps. Buys a house with the express purpose, according to Veronica, for her to move in with him. Also gets a dog, which is on par with a commitment of minimum 11 to 12 years. Minimum 11 to 12 years. A commitment. Not just an animal. A full-blown home commitment. Bought a fucking dog for her? Bruh. Oh, that's real. That is over simp behavior. That's worse than the tier 3 Pokemon simps. Holy shit.
Every time he looks down at Jojo, he feels a little guilt because he had gotten the dog for the wrong reasons. Again, Mick and I were not together when he had gotten this dog, and as far as he knew, we were never getting together. Yet he bought both a house and a dog with me in mind. Now let me just add, I don't think that Mick actually bought these two things with me in mind. I think he just wanted me to think that because he thought it was romantic. Like every decision he made had me in mind, whether or not we were together. But in reality, it comes off creepy and manipulative, making—
Dude, it's making my skin fucking crawl right now. Like, the whole concept of the guy buying a house with $1 million and getting the dog and all this shit. Like, my whole body just, like, I can feel my skin trying to leave my body. It's like that uncomfortable right now for me.
Making such massive decisions to woo a girl who had been trying to make it clear that she wasn't interested. Like before I went to Ireland, he gave me $300 out of nowhere. I'd forgotten my Apple Pencil, and so he shipped one all the way across the world along with 4 packs of cigarettes because he knew mine had gotten stolen. Nice on the outside, and I appreciated it, but he was doing so much for me. I can only assume, so I would consider being with him. And while I was in Ireland, he was filming the Markiplier video, so he would constantly send me messages where he would get the cast and crew all to say my name.
Hi, Veronica.
Hey, Veronica, what's up? Hey.
Oh, hey, what's up, Veronica? How you doing?
Hi, Veronica.
It was incredibly—
I'm not gonna lie, that's incredibly creepy. That's incredibly creepy. Not only does he send that much money to her, ships an Apple's pen overseas, and then proceeds to record a video of all the crew members at their job, their thing, and sending it to her with that pen. That is weird. That's too much. This is some fucking stalker shit. This is some stalker shit.
He wanted to make his love as obvious as possible. After a week or two, I once again ended things with Mark, secretly for the intention of starting a relationship with Mick, because I felt at this time that I'd loved him, and this was something I just couldn't overlook. When you're being reminded constantly of this person who has this undying love for you, it's hard not to start considering it. I've heard from friends that Mick's current narrative of the situation is that I was the one who manipulated him into the relationship, only to play with his heart and dump him a month later. So I hope it's made obvious from all the messages that I've been showing you that this is not just a case of me coming on to Mick, who was just along for the ride. Just like Smokey pursuing Edward, Mick actively pursued me for months. From telling me to break up with Chris, to confessing his love with me while I was with Mark, continuing to remind me of this when I told him to stop, Mick would not let up. If I never ended up being with Mick and stayed his friend to this day, I guarantee I would still be hearing about this on a constant basis. While we were together, he compared how he looked at me to the movie My Octopus Teacher, which is a movie about a man in crisis who finds a female octopus whom he has to learn how to love and appreciate without interfering with it. Mick saying that he could learn to love me without being in a relationship with me. But despite—
Dubby part. All right, so Bowblax. So how I interpret that situation, right? Because I've been through what Veronica's been through at one point in my life, right? I have. Where somebody has immense feelings towards you, but you don't know how to feel about it, and you're with someone else. You get gaslit into that situation exceedingly hard, right? Like, this person is constantly love bombing you. They're constantly telling you that they care about you. They constantly love you. Those are the situations, right, where you're basically, in a sense, being gaslit into caring about this person. And when it happens and you go forward with what they want, that that emotional connection is not real. It's fake. And if you're somebody that lies down when pressure gets really heavy, like what it seems like Veronica's angle is, where she got pressured so heavily into it, she left Mark for Mick. And because he just wouldn't stop. That's at least my interpretation of it, is that she took she basically fell for the trap of what Mick was trying to do. That's at least how I perceive it, because based on my personal experiences, that's how I look at it. Now, everyone can interpret it differently, but for me, she was gaslit into that situation. She shouldn't have left Mark for Mick, but she wasn't in a good mental state either, and an alcoholic on top of that. So it just comes across as incredibly gaslit. That's my interpretation of it, at least.
Saying this, his actions would continuously show otherwise. He wanted a relationship and would not quit until he got it. Here's a message Mick would send me while we were together, saying that it wasn't my fault that Mark was hurting so much, that it was his fault for having such high expectations. Which is ironic, seeing as Mick had put me on a pedestal, saying he worshipped me. So how Mark could be at fault for this, yet Mick doesn't realize that also applies to him, makes it clear how he's never willing to reflect or admit his own faults. Instead, looking to blame me. Like him putting me on this pedestal was my fault, like I had asked for this. So let me say definitively, I did not manipulate Mick into a relationship, despite what he says. I think it's very obvious from everything that I've shown that this was all his doing for pushing his feelings onto me when I had told him to stop.
Yeah, he bought a fucking dog for you at a house, according to you. That is really putting on the pressure unnecessarily. And then going around to you and to Mark being like, I don't know how long this is gonna last, but I love you. And fuck Mark. Like, what? The gaslighting is so insane from Mick. It's hilarious. It's not funny because she had to live through it, right? But I find it funny because Mick just comes across as the biggest cuck and the biggest simp ever. And then people on Twitter get mad at Bowblax for essentially just pointing out what everyone's thinking, is that Mick is a cuck and a simp.
Had plans to fly to New York to meet up with Ricardo, and while over there, he would have a conversation with one of his friends, telling him that I can't keep stringing him along like this, and that I need to give him a definitive answer as to whether or not we're going to be together for good, as I didn't give him a definitive answer when we had broken up. During Thanksgiving, I'd reach out to the same friend who I stayed in Philly with and told him I think I love Mick and that I want to pursue this relationship. My friend would tell me that if this wasn't something I was sure of, then I shouldn't go through with it until I was certain. I would make up my mind right then and there. I loved Mick and I wanted a relationship with him. But I had to wait until Mark would come home because I needed to tell him first, and then I needed to tell Smokey. See, around this time, Smokey had still not left for Vegas, almost a month passing by, living at Mick's. She started to grow feelings for him, and they began to start fucking. As they both...
This Smokey bitch is the ultimate succubus. I can't get over the fact how much of a fucking bitch this Smokey person is. Proceeds to continue to delay their leave from Mick's home, purposely staying there, develops feelings for Mick, fucks Mick, and then gets mad at Veronica for moving in with Mick and starting a relationship. That is... I get so many fucking creep vibes from Smokey. It hurts my brain.
Started bonding over their mutual sadness of not obtaining the love from both me and Edward. There were times I had met up with Mick and Smokey where she would outwardly try to claim what was hers. She'd wrap her arm around him when we go for walks, or she would rub his thigh under the table staring at me. When Smokey would get up to use the restroom, though, I would look at Mick and say, "What's going on?" To which he would exclaim, "I don't know, she just started doing this out of nowhere." Later that night, we would meet up with Smokey's new roommate, the one who lives in Las Vegas, as he was meant to pick her up and drive her and her things to their apartment. I would take this man aside and interrogate him about his intentions, gauging whether or not he was somebody I felt safe with having Smokey living with. I wanted to protect her and make sure that she wasn't moving in with some guy who was a complete freak. The guy checked out, he was fine. But seeing as Mick would be leaving for Thanksgiving that week, he would ask Smokey if she could stay longer to watch his house while he was gone. Smokey would try planting her roots, ironically with plants. She'd buy tons of orchids and fill them in his home, decorating it as if it belonged to her. This was a regular joke between Mick and I, as he didn't seem to care for it and would call Smokey a wife he didn't ask for.
Oh, Mick, you fucked up. You let crazy into your home. Like, I think Mick's a piece of shit, but he also let a batshit insane person in the house. That's... oh God. I actually feel fucking bad for that. I think Mick's a dick. But letting crazy into your home and letting crazy decorate your home with fucking commitments everywhere, Mick and Smokey deserve each other. They deserve each other.
comes back to LA from New York and I would pick him up at the airport, and Mark outright asks me what's been going on between us. He refers to this conversation that he had with his friend, wanting a definitive answer from me. I told him I loved Mick and that I wanted to start a relationship with him. At first, Mark seemed fine about it. It wasn't until the following days where it would become apparent that he was heartbroken. I want to remind you all that this is Mark's first time being in America alone. His best friend who was meant to stay with him had left. He didn't know anybody here who he can easily have a conversation with or see. Not to mention, his phone didn't even have service. With the person he had came out here for, just expressing to them that they didn't love him and they wanted to pursue somebody else. A person who had openly said to Mark's face, "I'm not sure how long you guys are gonna last." Again, if Mick wants to deny that he had said this, that's fine, but this is the same guy who admits to not remembering what happened that night. After dropping off Mark at my friend's house who had a spare room, I would go over to Mick's and talk to Smokey, to tell her that I was in love with Mick and wanted to pursue him. I knew that this would upset her, but I wanted to give her the courtesy as my friend to tell her this before telling Mick. Smokey takes it upon herself to immediately go behind my back and tell Mick what I had just shared with her, in hopes that she could remind him that what they had was special, and hope that he would consider her over me.
Oh, God, what the fuck? How did Mick fall in love with Smokey? They have the same fucking stupid tactics. I know you two hurt each other. Left me gobsmacked. I was like, hold on. I hurt her? I literally did most selfless thing anyone's probably done for her last year and put her well-being and happiness over mine. Suddenly it was, I don't want to hear about drama, lol. This is what Smokey is referring to when she claims I did the most selfless thing. But as we were going to see, it becomes apparent that this was done out of an attempt to stick around and watch our relationship from the sidelines. Ugh, so she likes to watch. Also acts like because she let me have Mick, that it negates all the other awful stuff she's done. That is so... These people are professional gaslighters, dude.
But also, I feel most would agree that her expressing my feelings towards Mick before I got the chance to was purely self-seeking on her behalf, to try and get Mick to consider her before I could tell him my feelings. Mick would eventually tell me that this happened, to which I had no proof, but luckily Smokey provided it in Just Stop's video, so here it is. Smokey talks as if her blessing was the deciding factor in all of this, when in reality, if she outwardly didn't approve, Mick had wanted to be with me for months now, vocalizing to me that he loved me whenever he could, and again, even in front of Mark. Smokey knew that she didn't want to leave, evident from the fact that she had stayed at Mick's house until January, and if she made it clear that she was unapproving of our relationship starting, the most natural thing to do would be to pack up her stuff and start moving into her new place in Las Vegas.
Get the fuck out, bitch! Get the fuck out! If you are upset that the person that you love... I just said the same thing about Mick! If the other person that you love and care about doesn't feel that way to you, be a fucking man, a grown man or a grown woman in this case, move the fuck out and quit harassing them. Because eventually, if that relationship does fall apart and they find out that they truly had feelings for you and come back to you, they do. It's the old saying, if you let something go and it comes back to you, it was always meant to be. That's how it works. But Smokey and Mick, according to this video, did not fucking get that old adage. They didn't understand that concept. It's fucking psychotic to me.
But she wanted to stay at Mick's and witness our relationship, hoping that she could still play some part in it. She would later admit to Mark that she didn't want to go to her new place, as everything would be moving on without her. This sort of thing made talking to Smokey, truthfully, very hard, because I knew that anything I confided into her was something that she would blabber about to anyone and everyone, especially given how she talked to everybody about her DMs with Edward. These people were also my friends, and I would frequently see them, resulting in me constantly trying to not tell her how I was truly feeling about stuff going on in my head, because she had only ever shown to me that she would go behind my back and tell everyone what I was saying in private. From what I've heard, most of our mutuals feel this way towards Smokey, that she has a big mouth and she likes to talk shit and gossip. Nothing said to her is ever confidential. Already, you can see how complicated this was. And also, how little context was given in all of Smokey's posts and in Just Stop's video. That's because this shows Smokey in a new light. Somebody who was desperate to be somebody's first choice, which never happened. Not with Edward, and not with Mick. This would fuck with Smokey greatly from this point on.
Dude, Smokey just looks like she's the kind of girl that would stab you in your fucking sleep and try to wear your clothing and pretend to be you because they got missed out on a relationship with someone else. It just screams imposter syndrome with a side of serial killer.
This is where things start getting fucked up, where we all know how we feel, but don't want to stop the party going and pretend that everything's just fine. I tell Mick what I had just told Mark and Smokey, which again, he would later admit to me that he already knew because Smokey told him. And now we're together, and this is exactly what he wanted. Mick takes it upon himself to make sure everybody is aware that we are together. Going on Twitter and commenting on my posts calling me babe, which I always hated. Making sure that he would say I love you and post to me, and conveniently picking me up outside the bathroom door while Mark would be in there, only for Mark to come out and see us together.
Cringe. He was treating her like property, dude. and especially in front of her ex-boyfriend, that's a dick move. That is a huge dick move. Huge dick move. I absolutely get. Oh my god, I can't wrap my brain around doing something like that. $5 from Devil Jinx. Does Edward sparkle and say this is the skin of a killer? I'm with your chat. All of these people sound like mooks. Just put them in a ring already. I kind of actually feel bad for Veronica, if I'm being upfront with you, and Mark, obviously. Now, Veronica's made a lot of very questionable decisions during the lowest point of her life, and she's done steps to make it better. It's the other people, like later on with DaftPina, Smokey, those people, and Mick, that are the biggest issue. Those three people, I think, deserve a shit ton more criticism that Veronica should be getting. I think, realistically, all of the frustration that was against Veronica from Just Stop's video should just be transferred over to them, because they are the worst ones in this situation, for me at least.
I was the trophy, and he had just won me. Let me remind you that this is somebody who had told me I should break up with Chris during our relationship, and had also given me unprompted back rubs. Somebody our friends would later tell me described me as a piece of meat. Somebody who would love bomb me, even though they knew I was in a relationship with Mark. Somebody who had led on Smokey, only to ditch her the first moment I offered my hand. And we'll soon see. Somebody who continued to tell me that they loved me after our breakup, and when I would try to establish boundaries, they didn't care about it. They didn't care about Chris, they didn't care about Mark, and he didn't care about Smokey. He just wanted what he couldn't have until I finally gave in. Mark would try to express to me that he was fine, even saying that it was alright if we were affectionate towards one another in front of him. But this was because he had nobody else to hang out with while he was in LA. All he could do was hang out with the one person he knew, me.
Weird collar guy with the 5-month membership based. All this is classic addiction behavior. Exactly. Like I've seen people that I know like go through shit like this. That's why I'm sympathetic to her more.
And I was always at Mick's house. Mark would later tell me that he wanted me to stop being affectionate in front of him. He was the only one that told me how he felt instead of letting stuff continue, like Smokey. Smokey would start ramping up her drinking even more than we normally did. She would act like everything is fine and fun and happy for us, expressing at one point during LA Comic-Con that she loved seeing me and Mick kiss each other, which I thought was really weird. But as our nights would—
Ew! The fuck? It's not even like a kink or anything. That's just being creepy, dude.
Would continue, she would break down, crying, getting sadder and sadder, but insisting it wasn't having anything to do with me and Mick being a couple. Not only was she staying in the house of the man who rejected her, but almost every day she would sit on the couch and watch Edward's YouTube videos on Mick's television, the same ones, over and over and over. She was obsessive. I would say, why do you keep watching this, assuming that obviously it's not going to help her situation, to which she'd give me the fake answer, oh, I just love supporting my friends. Clearly—
Oh, the red flags everywhere, my dude. Thank you, Mike the Bike, for the raid. Appreciate it. You're watching me have a conniption. My skin is fucking crawling. I absolutely hate this story. My fucking hands hurt just thinking about this shit.
Really, she loved watching him and his face and his jokes. This started as a parasocial relationship at home, and suddenly she's thrusted into this world with all these people. So I guess I couldn't have expected her to act any differently. There was even a time where she had gotten so emotional and drunk, while talking to Edward on Snapchat about her feelings, she gave me the phone to have me talk for her. So Edward, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but that was me at one point. It's the first night Mick and I would be sleeping in the same bedroom together, and Smokey would be forced to sleep on the couch. We would obviously drink that night, ending the party with me and Mick going back into his room, and Smokey consistently drank and was blasting music until 5 a.m. The next day, she would beg me to watch her favorite movie, Secretary. For those who don't know what this movie is, it's a movie about a woman who cuts herself, and then she finds a job and has a BDSM relationship with her boss, ending with her pissing herself and him saying, I love you. Personally, I hated this film, but I really wanted—
That's Smokey's favorite movie, is a movie about BDSM, pissing yourself, getting her boss to say I love you and cutting herself. What the fuck? How? That's her favorite movie? I'm seeing like 50 fucking red flags all over the place. It's actually horrifying. I would be terrified if I met this person. I would be scared shitless if this person was in my life. Mike the Bike with $5. Why does Veronica have nice booba in the art? Shaking my head. Because she probably has nice booba in real life. I don't know. I've only seen like a handful of pictures of her. I'm not staring at her tits, Mike. You horny bastard.
wanted to make Smokey happy, considering that she wasn't really in the best circumstances that she willfully put herself into. Smokey would then ask me to go outside and have a conversation with her. And I'll be honest with you, this really stressed me out. I was already feeling the pressure from Mark expressing to me his sorrows about our breakup, breaking down crying in front of me, and me trying my best to console him. This obviously wasn't the best way to help, but what more could I do? I'm the cause of his heartbreak. So I stepped outside with Smokey, and she would say, I shit you not, verbatim, now I did something last night, and I don't want you to think it's because of you and Mick. I'm just a little depressed and I was thinking about Edward and I had a sad girl moment. She lifts up her sleeve, exposing her forearm covered in cuts.
Calls it a sad girl moment. I'm going to be open about something really quick. I had an ex-girlfriend a lot like Smokey. That's why I'm getting like all this like fucking tingling on my body of like I'm not going to call it like PTSD or anything, but like it's just reminding me of an ex-girlfriend I used to have. And like there's a part of me that absolutely gets disgusted when I hear stories like this. Like I actually get disgusted thinking of shit like that because I've dealt with it. I know what that's like. It's terrible. It's terrible. And especially when this person just does it for attention. I know what that's like. And Veronica being placed in that situation is fucking horrible. That's terrible. Jesus.
All the way down. This was the point where I was like, holy shit, I need to get out. She could tell me all she wants that she did this because of Edward and not because of me and Mick, but I find it all too much of a coincidence that this happened the first night me and Mick had slept together. And showing me this movie with similar themes came off as a way of prepping me for what's to come. This right here is manipulation. She wanted me to see how much she was suffering because of how much rejection she was facing and nobody picking her first. This is how she wanted to get my attention, not by a conversation where she was honest, but by self-harm. Later that night, Mark would join us over at Mick's because he had offered Mark to use his recording booth, so Mark would take him up on that offer, but also because I was over there and Mark would want to see me. Smokey would later say that Mark was shitty because he would use Mick's recording booth but talk shit about him, but as you can see where all this tension between me and Mark was, he really needed any excuse to come over, asking to use the booth and then sticking around after. He would continue to use Mick's booth after all of this because he had a schedule to work under, and Mick kept offering it to him saying that he wanted people to get use out of it. Mark came in and saw the cuts all down Smokey's arm because at this point, there was no real
flat ass. This bitch has the flattest ass. How does anyone want to fuck that? She's not even that attractive in the photos. Why? Why would you do it? She's got no cake, my dude. She's got no cake. What's the point? What is the point? There's nothing to grab. This is an ugly bitch. This girl just slept around to sleep at other people's places and stay with them and is a crazy person. Why are people having sex with her? Because she let them. That is the issue. She's not a real person. She's somebody that manipulates all the fucking situations to fit her favor. From what Veronica's trying to allege here, this woman is crazy.
Reason for her to hide it. And immediately shocked, he looked at me and mouthed the words, "Is that real?" Smokey sees this and brushes it off, laughing, saying, "Oh, I just had a sad girl moment." Mark has begun forcing himself to drink because that was all we were doing, and he felt like this was a solution to nullifying his feelings. Mark would take 4 shots of vodka without even flinching because he wasn't aware of the aftertaste.
Fun fact, Mark asked me to record at my place before he asked Mick, but I couldn't at the time. Damn, Bowblax, you could have saved this. You could have saved this whole situation. You could have done this, but Mark probably wouldn't end up married to Mick. So I guess there's like this nice light at the end of the tunnel that Veronica's changing her life and she's back together with Mark. There's a good light at the end of the tunnel. I blame Bowblax. This is all Bowblax's fault now.
So he would keep drinking multiple times to the point of throwing up. It really felt like this was a fucking madhouse. Mick wouldn't care. He wanted a party house. Mick parading me around, Smokey over here with cuts down her arm, and Mark drinking himself until he pukes. And I'm just here pretending like everything is totally fine. When Mark eventually gets back home to Ireland, he learned that writing was a good way to vent out his feelings. Here's an excerpt that he had written for himself, describing what it was like. And again, this was written by him right after he had gotten out of all of this mess. Mark asks me if we can please hang out away from-
I needed a video. It was the long con. Bowblax is just like, I did this on purpose. He's like, I knew everything going on, and I just let it happen because I needed to farm views. That's at least what the people on Twitter are saying about you, Bowblax, that you just farm fucking outrage views, which is retarded. Devil Jinx with a 5. Rear end flatter than Rey's character. Development in Star Wars Waka Waka. Jesus Christ. Based.
from Mick's house. He's only got a short amount of time left in California and doesn't want to spend it in that madhouse. So we go to my parents' house where we just work and watch movies. I receive a snap message from Smokey. Smokey asks me if it's okay if she has a closure night with Mick.
Oh, no. Okay. Ladies, I think you know this better than the men. But if a girl texts you, I need a closure night with your boyfriend because they previously slept with them at one point, that means that they're trying to fuck them again. That's what that means. And if you don't believe that, then you obviously have fucking blinders on. Closure night, that means they're gonna fuck. Like, it's pretty obvious that that's the attempt that's being made here. QTV with the $5. She probably got massive insecurity and self-image issues, and the attention the men give her by hooking up with her gives her validation, I guess, but she also used that to her advantage to try and move in with people.
First, I figured this was just a night for her and him to talk and like watch movies and hang out. But upon clarifying what she had meant,
that's
she's
not what that
outright
means.
asking me if she could fuck Mick one last time for closure. Mark instantly starts laughing at me, obviously knowing this was what I deserved and what I signed up for. Angry,
which, to be honest, Mark was in the right for that one. I can't even get mad at Mark for laughing at that situation. Fair enough.
Called Mick and asked him what his response was. His response was, oh, well, you should go ask Veronica. This was a second big red flag that I'd gotten from Smokey. My so-called best friend, who had just revealed to me that they had cut themselves because of this person, is now asking me if they could fuck my boyfriend for closure. And my boyfriend is considering it so long as I'm okay with the idea. These were the people I was spending my everyday with. Drinking, shit-talking, all praising each other like it was us against the world. This is...
Her boyfriend's response was, yeah, I told her to ask you if it was okay. Oh my fucking God. No shot. No shot, my dude. That's so fucked. Oh, like I've dated, the last girlfriend I had, we had the conversation about like three-way stuff. We were fine with that because she was bisexual. It never really happened, but there was always a conversation about it. It was a lot of fun, the idea of it, but hell, if it did happen, it happened. If it didn't happen, it didn't happen. But in that relationship, I never had like a friend of mine reach out to me. Like, I used to be friends with her ex-boyfriend, and I never had him text me and be like, hey, I need a closure night with what's her name? Can I hang out with her? And then she comes to me and says, well, yeah, I'd like to hang out with him, but I told him to ask you first. And I'm like, that's insanity. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh, no, that's some fuck shit.
This is the girl who says that she did stuff for my well-being. Yeah, wanting to fuck Mick while we were together sure was in my best interest, Smokey. I tell her no, and I'm baffled at the idea that she would even ask me this. But we move on. She's leaving soon, and I just want everything to be okay. After weeks of not communicating with his friends, Mark finally tells Sunny and Strawberry Mage about what's been going on since he'd last seen them. Sunny realizes the patterns that I've been falling into since my breakup with Chris, and as a good friend, he messages both me and Mick, telling us both that this relationship wouldn't be in my best interest, and that I need to be alone to figure things out for myself. I tell him that I could still work on myself while being in this relationship with Mick, and Mick tells him, don't worry, I have her best interests at heart, honestly. I want to point out that I almost never took my iPad over at Mick's to work, and when I did, we never worked. All we did was drink and party, and not once did Mick ever bring up the thought of me working while we were together. Mark's drinking is on par with us, and he's finding it harder to avoid these emotions, resulting in situations at Mick's house where he would come to me crying, making it clear that he was unhappy. Smokey sends Mark a message telling him that if he keeps this up, that he would lose me forever, which—
Oh my God, what the fuck is this? What I'm getting at is, Veronica loves you. She wants you in her life. She considers you one of her closest friends. I know things aren't exactly how you hope between the two of you. I know how painful that is. Yeah, you do know, bitch. And that isn't an adjustment. And that it's an adjustment with a lot of processing and healing to sort through. And it will take time, but you got to be present with it. It's normal to go back and forth with the I don't care, I'm totally over it, to then having a whole host of contradicting feelings bubble up the next day. But I found it more helpful personally. You committed self-harm to the girl that was going to the guy that you fell in love with. You can't go to other people and give them advice. I don't believe in that. You don't deserve to go and do that. Sorry, Smokey, you fucking bitch. You have no right to do that. Let's see here. Something to go back and forth, but I don't care where to go. I find it more helpfully personally to acknowledge this is a process that takes time to acknowledge that you're not okay and still hurting a lot. We know we want to be there for you, but you have to face things and realize that it is your seeking. Because some nights a lot of frustration comes out of you directed at Veronica. Like last night, there's just always an amount of emotional work that falls directly on us. And we have to work to find our own people. You know, Veronica has apologized, and I hope you know how sincere she is in that and how much she hurts over knowing she caused some of the most important people, to her pain. You and I both know she spends a lot of time actively trying to uplift and bring happiness to people around her. It's who she is. She's the sunshine bringer. Oh, God. She's talking to Mark, apparently. It's why it sucks when I see you try to rehash and remind her of how much she hurt you, because it gets to the point where you start to wonder, what is the point? I don't think you're actively trying to punish her. I think you're hurting, validly. But I also think you're scared of losing her altogether. This is behavior that can potentially push people away, and maybe it's a defense mechanism, but I don't think you truly wanted to push her away, and you two have a beautiful friendship, and you both cherish. This bitch should not be giving advice to Mark. I'm being honest. This bitch has no reason to give advice to Mark. The reason why she shouldn't be giving advice to Mark is because she's an actual crazy person.
Which was true. Things were getting bad between us, and I couldn't keep listening to how much I hurt him and help him with the same hurt. From this point, things get better between Mark and I. He had found talking to friends other than me, such as Strawberry Mage and Sunny, would help him feel better. And because of this, our friendship started to become healthier. Which leads me to an interesting time where we all took a trip to the Natural History Museum. I'd asked Mark, Strawberry Mage, Mick, and Smokey if they all wanted to go, and we all went together. Mark and I had a fun time joking around, but any time that we'd be giggling to one another, Mick would instantly come in and try and interject to be a part of whatever we were joking about. There's a point where at the end of the museum, we all go to the gemstones area, and Mick would come up to me and be like, "What do you think about that?"
DaftPina's coming, don't worry about it.
Most men would do in trying to find the right type of ring for a woman when looking for engagement rings. This was the tone that I would receive from him, especially because a couple weeks later, he would ask me if I would like to have a wedding in the Shire, just because I had a tattoo that said the Shire. And then I'd be like, I don't know, I guess so. To which he would say, "Oh my God, are we talking about this?" This was the behavior I was getting. Instantly, he wanted me to move into his house, and already he's trying to talk about wedding stuff. This was too fast and making me incredibly uncomfortable. We reached the gift shop, and Mark and I are at the far end of the cashier's desk looking at some dumb toys, when we suddenly hear, "Ma'am, I'd like to see that one." I'd look over at the cashier pulling out the ugliest pair of yellow earrings I'd ever seen.
Oh, no. They just started dating. He's asking her to move into his house, and he is talking about something that is on par with getting married. Oh no. That's really, 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 really bad. That's not good. That's creep shit. That's shit that you should not be doing until like a year or two into the relationship or however long. But to be honest, if that person isn't ready for that fucking conversation, you shouldn't be bringing it up.
Rush over to him and I say, "Mick, what are you trying to do?" And I go and ask the cashier, "Please just put these back. I don't want them." To which Mick thinks this is like a funny little moment that we're sharing. But I look at this as another example of Mick trying to rub it in Mark's face that he has me. Mark and Smokey are leaving soon, but Smokey outwardly asks in front of us, "I think I need to stay until Christmas." She had been at Mick's house rent-free, staying there for about 2 months now. At this point, I was ready for her to leave. And Mick too, because he would express to me that he wanted everybody out of his house. How he wanted to just be alone with me. Now that he has me, he no longer wants this party house. So remember how I had mentioned that Mick wanted me to move in? Well, he had offered me that, as well as re-landscaping his whole yard so all of my dogs can come live with him.
Dude, this is too much. I'm even getting overwhelmed. I'm getting overwhelmed at this point. Where it's like the amount, the whistles are valid in the chat. Keep the whistles up. Because right now, that is some scary shit that's happening. That he's going to redo the entire fucking, the entire lawn and everything. That's actually psycho. Doesn't Veronica do the same thing with Mark later and she wants to settle down and have kids? That's because she was actually in love with Mark and realized that over time by fixing herself and coming back together with Mark. Did you miss the part that Mark and Veronica's relationship is now happy and healthy? Yeah, she's made mistakes, but she fixed it. Mick, on the other hand, was continuously love-bombing her in the most creepy ways imaginable, buying a home under the impression that she was going to move in with him, and then buying a fucking dog to try and have her sit with a commitment with him. If you don't see the difference between Mark's situation and Mitch's situation, you are blind to the situation and only have outrage. That is what you are. Sorry.
I'd tell him that I would consider it, but inwardly, things were moving way too quick. Not to mention how uneasy this relationship has already been starting off. Especially considering that this girl that Mick would fuck is staying in his house, who clearly loves him, and he won't put his foot down telling her to leave. I reluctantly offer Smokey to celebrate Christmas with my family, with the promise that we would drive her home after New Year's. Mark leaves to go home, and during this car ride, we don't really acknowledge what had happened. Once he gets to the airport, I leave him a voicemail crying saying how sorry I was for putting him through all this. It's Christmas time, and Smokey spends it with my family, and at the same time, Mark is messaging me sending me art that he had made of us referencing some conversations that we had had in the past. Mark realizes that he needed to start distancing himself from me, and he tells me through text that he's not going to talk to me for a while, until he figures out his feelings. I was pretty upset to hear this because I like talking to him, but also it was starting to become more apparent how this relationship with Mick wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. He would say cringy love things to me like he had gotten them from a movie. It was obvious now that we're in a relationship that what I loved about him wasn't what he actually was, almost like everything shifted. Tell our friend Strawberry Mage that I'm not going to be on Discord very much, seeing as every time that I would interact with Mark in calls, he would be extremely standoffish with me. Understandably so, but it made me feel unwelcomed, so I would tell him that I wouldn't be around. Strawberry Mage would relay this to Mark, which would prompt Mark to call me saying that he didn't intend on making me feel like I needed to distance myself from my friends, and during this call, Mark would give me the most harshest and realest talk I've ever had. He would express to me that I'm wasting my life, that I'm drinking every day and doing nothing at Mix, that I have all this potential and I'm not doing anything with it, and if I—
That is the definitive difference between the relationship of Mark and Veronica versus the relationship of Mick and Veronica. Mick's situation is love bombing, gaslighting, and trying to, and basically, in my opinion, manipulating her into the relationship because that's what he wanted. Then you have the Mark situation where Mark, had an emotional connection to her and he decided to step back. And what happened was that Mark sat down with her and was like, listen, your life is, you're fucking up your life. He had a real heart-to-heart with her. Mick, on the other hand, had none of that kind of conversation. None of that whatsoever. He just continued to enable the bad behaviors and then continue to gaslight those bad behaviors so that she would be with him. Mark had the more adult response than a man in his mid-30s to 40s. That is the definitive difference between the two situations. And if you can't see the difference between the two, you're out of your fucking mind.
If I keep this going in 5 years' time, it will hit me like a huge truck. I knew he was right about everything, and I tell him that he was right and I really needed to change. Again, Mark was the only one to ever give me a reality check like this. I break up with Mick a few days later, expressing to him that I really need to focus on myself, that how we're continuing things is incredibly unhealthy, that I'm not happy, and I feel like I'm very stressed out. At this point, I'm in a relationship with an enabling alcoholic, me being an alcoholic myself, and having this crazy woman around involving herself in our lives, who is already talking about the next time they want to come back to Mix. Meanwhile, she's drinking herself until she passes out and pukes. I'm losing my hair over this, my skin is changing colors, and I haven't eaten very much. Everything about my life at this point is overwhelming and stressful, and I don't know what I'm doing. We drive Smokey and her junk to Vegas and we finally move her into her apartment. I tell her new roommate that he needs to clean up and fix the bathroom, wanting to make sure that Smokey was in a good environment if she was going to be living here.
Which is really nice of her for a complete psychopath that tried to say that Veronica was actively trying to destroy her life and was her abuser. That's incredibly kind of her to do that. Most people wouldn't fucking do that. Most people that you wrong and you realize that wronged you, you're not going out of your way to make sure that they're happy and healthy in another location. You tell them to fuck off and I never want to see you again. That is the difference. Veronica doesn't seem like an abusive person towards Smokey, as Smokey alleged previously. If anything, she did everything she could to make sure she was happy. The Mick situation put a strain on it, but Mick never cared about Smokey. Ever. He fucked her. That's it. Smokey is attributing love and sex to the same fucking thing. It's not. Spectre with the 199. The difference between fling and a husband. Exactly. Mick fling. Mark husband.
I was already sick of her, but I still considered her my friend and wanted her to at least be happy. When Mick and I are driving ourselves back, he would ask,
who gives a shit if they got married in a few months? How is it off-putting? People get married. They were together. They knew each other for a significant period of time. The relationship fell apart because of Veronica's own poor actions and her own addictions. She realized that, changed herself for the better, which is later on in this video. And then her and Mark got back together and made a life together and got married. You do realize that all that time they spent together before all the craziness, the cheating and everything, still could translate into a positive relationship later on. If Mark and her had that conversation and they actually cared about each other. You're off put because it doesn't fit your moral standards of what kind of person or people should get married if they care about each other. That's your issue. That's you trying to put your own box of what you consider acceptable on two people that you don't know. Versus the situation with Mitch and Smokey, who would emotionally gaslight people around them to hating Veronica and emotionally gaslight Veronica. Well, Mark and her built something on actual solid ground and fixed their stuff and got better with each other and started dating again. And yeah, some things happened in it, but they worked through it. That's the difference.
Me if there was somebody else, to which I would tell him no, which was true. I never intended on starting a relationship with Mark at this point, or any relationship for that matter. Me getting back with Mark came later, as we would call as we normally did, and things seemed simple again. Mark and I had already planned on starting the podcast, and we'd been talking about this for months, and Butch Hartman giving us a response, pushing the date sooner than we had expected. Mark would be coming into LA, not for me, but to strictly see Butch. Smokey finds out that I break up with Mick, and
if I was in Mark's shoes, I would have cut my losses. I don't know about that. I've been in those kinds of relationships. I don't think I would have. If I really cared about somebody, and I had a sneaky suspicion they really cared about me, and we were good fucking friends, best friends even, and we found a way to get past all the rough parts and come back together later on and move past those rough patches, I can go through with that. That's fine. That's called like actual love, where you can get through the worst parts of someone's life, still be there for them. Even if they fuck up, there's still a way for you to forgive them. I think I'd be able to continue that forward. Sure, I'd be upset in the moment, but if we actually worked it out and there was real apologies placed and we worked through that and it's no longer toxic and we're happy together, who are you to say that anyone should just leave the relationship? Veronica owned up to her mistakes, and especially her mistakes with Mark.
Text me asking me why I didn't tell her first, that she thought we were best friends and that we could be honest with one another. Meanwhile, also messaging Mick, wanting to start things up where they had left off. She didn't need to tell me this, but it's odd that in the same conversation that she's expressing to me that she's sad, that I'm not being honest with her, that she goes behind my back and texts my ex-boyfriend that she wants to be with them and that she wants to start things up with them again. Mick would try.
If I ever do love phones with Tommy, that would go terribly. I think it would go absolutely horrible. I say all these things, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel about a lot of the relationships. That's it. You go through if you can get through the toughest obstacles and forgive that person, that means a lot in the future. You know what I mean?
Try to tell me that he loved me after we had broken up, to which I would express to him that we need boundaries, that I was not emotionally available to be there for him, seeing as I did that with Mark and it didn't help. Here's a fun little side note. Mick would judge Mark for how heartbroken he was, because our relationship had only lasted a couple of months. Meanwhile, here's Mick getting bent out of shape in the same way.
You just haven't found true love then yet, A-okay. You just haven't found true love. And that's okay. Not a lot of people do. And if they truly love each other, they can get past all of these things. And they talk about it later on in the video.
We were only together for around a month. I'd like to point out, too, that Mark was 19, going through his first real heartbreak, and Mick, who is 41, who has been in and out of relationships where he would continuously shit-talk his girlfriends.
He's 41.
I'd like to point out that Mick is 13 years older than me. I recently found out from someone who worked on the Just Stop video that Smokey was trying to convince them that I was grooming Mark, that he was 17 when we first met, and I sent him nudes when he was underage. This is another case of Smokey blatantly lying without any repercussions.
This bitch is crazy. Just look at those eyes. This is the kind of person that will go out of their way to completely destroy you. Look at this. Look at this. That's the kind of bitch that will stab you in your sleep and cut your dick off if you even remotely go against anything that they want. That is what this person looks like.
Thinking she can say whatever she wants without evidence. Like most of Smokey's claims, this can easily be disproven, given how I had never even met Mark until October of 2020, when he was 18 and we never expressed any interest in each other until he was 19 and turning 20. Again, I found this out from somebody who was heavily involved in the Just Stop video, that it was originally going to be brought up, but was dropped due to there being no evidence. So I just want to make this clear, because Smokey will try and lie about anything just to try and drag me down. Mick responds to Smokey's message of love.
Oh my fucking god, this guy's insane. Look at the wall of texts. Look at this. How can you sit back and be like, Veronica fucked over Mick? No. This looks crazy. This looks crazy, dude.
not by addressing what she's saying, but instead raving about how much he's madly in love with me, acknowledging basically everything I'd been talking about. Pushing onto me the life that he wanted for me, not the life that we could have built together. Even saying that with the way he was acting, that there was no room for my aspirations. He was the clinging ooze, you see. His words, not mine. Here's a message that Mick sent to Smokey in response to her love that he would later send to me. At this moment, all I can honestly say, I miss your company and cherish your kindness.
Oh no.
And any part of me that even flirts with the idea of continuing on from where we were headed before Thanksgiving feels like a dangerously disingenuous gesture in light of the impossible enormity of my love for Veronica. I know I'm not stupid, not about people. I like to believe that I could read a room or a face. And in this situation, I did see some finality in Veronica's eyes. At this moment, I do feel a sense of hopelessness, partially as I did before. But no matter how hard I've tried, and you know how hard I've tried in the past, this feeling that fills every atom in my body hasn't budged. Time will tell, but so far the only thing that time has told me is that I can't stop loving Veronica. Like all of us, you, Veronica, and I need to stand on my own 2 feet. For me, emotionally. It's not fair for anyone to have the full weight of the other bearing down on them as they learn to carry themselves. My love for Veronica became toxic the moment I placed all my hopes and dreams in her hands. Where the fuck was there any room for hers? Sure, I'd hope some of those dreams would be shared, but I never asked. I never waited for them to naturally unfold over time. I just poured them over her like a wet cement the moment she offered her hand. The worst part was, I was fully aware as it was happening. I could feel myself pushing her away with my love. I became a clinging ooze that only grew in the mass more unsure I grew about her feelings, despite her telling me that everything was fine. There was no balance, and without balance, there was no true partnership. There was a parent and a child, a master and a slave, a queen and a servant. And while some would seek out relationships of imbalanced dynamics, that was never what either of us would have wanted, I believe. I need to redefine myself, a version not built on the pedestal I'd placed her on. I can only hope that one day that version of myself will cross paths with who she desires to become, and from equal footing, I could love her as a true partner, one she feels respects her, rather than one who worships her. I'm realizing as I'm writing this how selfish it is that after you sharing your feelings for me, I've spent so many words and thoughts talking about Veronica. I apologize from the bottom of my heart.
So mind you where this text message is being sent. Mind you, this was sent to Smokey, according to the situation. And this was sent to Smokey after Smokey professed her love to Mick. And Mick goes, bruh, I love Veronica too much, lol. He goes on a whole tirade. They're both crazy. Mick is crazy. And so is Smokey. They deserve each other, guys. They really do. These people are one and the same. 2 sides of the same coin.
I'm sorry. I suppose this is all still so fresh. Here is Mick admitting that the way he had been treating me was toxic. He also mentions the pedestal that he put me on. Again, this was something I never asked for. They placed me on this pedestal that I never required them to, and got mad that I didn't meet up with their expectations. I still try to be friends with Mick during this period. He is still somebody I cared about, and I had no intentions of cutting him out of my life, even taking care of his dog Jojo while he went to Philly to spend time with his friends after the breakup. When Mick comes back to pick up his dog, he asks if he could speak.
Chris, do you think all this needed to be aired out at all? It seems inappropriate even to be hearing. I feel fucking uncomfortable after hearing this. Like I need to take a shower. So this is the thing. If the DaftPina Smokey group did not proceed to push a narrative through the Just Stop video, Veronica's video wouldn't have to be made. It's important when situations like these come out, even if it's uncomfortable. I already gave the warning in the beginning. Even if it is uncomfortable to go over things like these, not only for archival purposes, but to show the faults of the people that are pushing these false narratives. That's why videos like Just Stops that use second party fucking information and people that are emotionally invested in the situation are videos that need to be called out. That's why the community got so fucking on Just Stop's ass the moment that video was released, because there was no reason for this to come out. I feel terrible for Veronica, but Mick and Smokey do not deserve any sort of leeway according to the situations that Veronica has brought up and the evidence presented in the Just Stop video. These people need to be called out because they've been going underground for way too long. As uncomfortable as it is, it's important to talk about those things.
Outside, and so we go to the park and talk about his feelings.
Pigeon salad for the $5, mixed down so bad that he's tunneling through the core of the earth at this point. Exactly.
When Mick comes back to pick up his dog, he asks if he could speak outside, and so we go to the park and talk about his feelings. This is when he would admit to me that he had gotten his dog for the wrong reasons. During this talk, he would ask me again if there was somebody else, to which I would respond that while I didn't leave him for anyone, that over time Mark and I had expressed that we still had interest in one another, me planning on going to Ireland with him in April. Mick gets really upset and asks if me and Mark had been doing anything sexual, to which I'm honest and I say yes. In retaliation, he says, well, I guess I'll just go fuck Smokey then. She was going to be coming into town soon. I didn't like Smokey at this point, but I had nothing but her best interest in mind, even though I had every...
Mick's a total douchebag. Total douchebag. Like, right then and there. We broke up. We're no longer together. He asked the first time, is there anyone else? She goes, no, I'm working on myself. Then when she starts getting relationship-y with Mark again, she tells him the truth. He gets mad and just goes, I'm going to go fuck the crazy bitch. Oh my God. Mick is such a fucking cuck.
Reason to not care for her. From refusing to leave, to her asking if she could fuck my boyfriend at the time, to her lying to my face about being honest, while asking Mick if she could still get back together with him. I explained to Mick that I didn't feel that this was fair to her, that he had witnessed how badly she had been affected by Edward and him in the past, and if he was going to fuck her and didn't love her, then that would just be evil. His only response to this was, yeah, well, that's not any of your concern now, is it? I want to say that Mick can once again deny that this ever happened, but I would tell Mark, who would laugh at the absurdity of this, and made this meme. The dates clearly being from not long after. Mick knew that Smokey loved him and didn't feel the same way back to her. As you can tell from that long message he had sent her about still loving me, and even was talking about their imbalance of love. Despite in his message to her that he sent me, he said that he didn't want to seek out a relationship with imbalanced dynamics. Yet here he is openly admitting that that's him and Smokey. Fully aware that there was an imbalanced dynamic here, but telling me to my face that he's just gonna fuck her. This is the real Mick, the one behind the nice guy positive persona he portrays online. He didn't care if fucking her would eventually hurt her. He just cared about getting back at me. And from what our mutuals are telling me, he would continue to talk shit about her to this day. During one of our last conversations about breaking up, he would say to me, well, I'm still gonna buy you the Apple Watch, to which I told him, I don't need it, I don't want it. And these were the type of shallow gestures of love that he would continue to give me. Funnily enough, the message that Mick sent to me, the one where he called himself the clinging ooze, he originally said to me in a call. He called my phone to read out this message along with—
Oh no. This is high school level situations that are happening right now. That this man wrote an entire notepad worth of a book explaining his love to this woman and then calls them to read the notepad to them. That is on par with writing a poem about your true feelings to someone else because they don't share the feelings that you have. Oh, that's so cringe.
Smokey's messages. I said at that point in time that I really just wanted to focus on my work, and despite him continuously telling me otherwise, he would continue to drag me back into the same discussion.
A part of me thought, for the sake of continuing our friendship, a reminder of how I understand where you're at would kind of help. But I can see that, yeah, there was other context in those messages that could lead you to believe other things. I would hope that our conversation kind of cleared that up, but I guess it didn't.
Thank you, Repzilla. I do need alcohol. I'll be honest. I think I'm gonna grab a beer in a second. QTV Stolen Valor with the $2. I thought fedoras were out of style.
And the last thing I want to do is make you feel uncomfortable. I'll also say thank you for clarifying that it will never happen. That is actually, you know, a thought that I've had in the back of my head, and that doesn't necessarily change exactly how I feel, but...
But why did you continue to pursue it if you knew in the back of your head that it wasn't going to work out for you? You can't use the excuse of, well, I truly loved you and I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. That's bullshit, because you had your doubts in the back of your head. Maybe take an... And maybe look deep within yourself and go, you know what? If I'm having these second thoughts that she's probably not in love with me, maybe I should back off and let her be independent. But no, he couldn't even do that because he's a crazy person.
It's a good thing to hear or read. So, yeah, I apologize that upset you. That was the last thing I wanted to do. The last thing I wanted to do. It really was just like, hey, I'm glad we had a talk and you don't need to worry about stuff, and I'm sorry if it came off as something else, and that's my bad. That's my bad. So, yeah.
Mick, it's really hard for me to consider that this wasn't with the intent of your feelings involved, especially considering that you had already relayed this entire message to me, letting me know where you were at that situation. So you can't blame me for thinking that it just comes off as this reminder and a reminder of your intentions and feelings, and despite what I had said that it didn't matter because you wanted to send me what you wanted to send me with your feelings involved, not considering how it could possibly affect me. I recognize that you're saying that it doesn't come from that place, and I believe you because of course I would, but
that part is so weird. Hold on, I want you guys to see that screenshot real quick. This one right here. So he sent this entire note to her, right? In its entirety. Screen capped it, everything. Not meant as anything. Mind you, it's literally him still professing his love for her. He goes, not meant as anything, but an archive. If you ever care to re-clue in at where I am at. What? So you're saying that this has, so how I perceive this note, right? This entire fucking chain of DMs. The first half of the first part that he wants her to understand is that I still love you. I still care about you. I want you to be with me, but I know I know you're not ready to be with me and all this shit. But also for her to, with the express purpose of her to re-look at these messages every time to know exactly where he's at, so that, in a sense, how I look at it is that she feels a level of guilt for leaving him. That's what it screams at for me.
Come from that place, and I believe you, because of course I would. But you can't help but blame, or you can't blame me for feeling like what this could intend. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you now, that was not my intent. I don't need you to attend to my feelings. I sent that message with a good night, and I meant it. And I didn't want it to fucking weigh on you. I sent it as, it was a stupid thing to do, I guess, in retrospect, but it really was just a reminder of like, hey, we covered some stuff, and I just want you to know that I'm not going to be harping on you, and you know, that I want you to do what you got to do. That is what the intent was. I'm sorry if it came off otherwise. I know there was a lot of other context there. That was not the intent, and I am sorry. That is the last thing I fucking want, and I hope you fucking know that.
That he loved me, that he would always love me. He tells me that he gets the message and that he'll stop doing this. But
Then
that very same
stop doing
day,
it.
Mick sends me the screenshots of the messages, the ones that I had just read out to you, the ones that he had just read out to me in that call, saying that if I ever wanted to archive this to clue myself back into how he feels about me, he wanted me to know that he would always love me and that he would wait for me. I tell Mick that he's doing the thing he just told me that he wouldn't be doing by bringing up how he'll never stop loving me, to where he immediately
It just
tried
doesn't
calling
stop.
me.
It just
At the time that
doesn't
this had
stop.
happened, I was in a
It
call with
just
Mark,
doesn't-
working. I don't answer the phone the first
It
call he
just
gives
doesn't
me,
stop.
but he continues to text me saying that he still wants to call. I asked Mark if he would listen to this call with me, as I had no witness to Mick's true behavior towards me, telling me that he loves me telling him to stop, him saying that I don't
Yeah,
understand,
sure, yeah, okay,
that
I'll do that.
everything he does means he loves me. There would be many times where I would be talking on the phone with Mick, only for Smokey to randomly interject, me realizing that she was there listening the whole time. So I'm not the only one who was guilty of this.
This bitch is like a sexual vulture that's just flying around, just picking at anything that she can to get her good graces so that she can get dick. This woman is insane. Smokey is a psychopath.
So I answer the phone call with Mark still being on Discord. Mick proceeds to insistently tell me that I'm misinterpreting what he means when he says he loves me, going into how everything he does means he loves me. I put my foot down and I told him that he wasn't respecting my boundaries, which leads him to start yelling at me, telling me how I don't understand. At this point, I'm being very intimidated by him, and the best thing to do is just apologize, tell him yes, okay, I'm sorry, and end this phone call. This would be one of the first times Mark would witness this type of behavior, but would not be the last. It's January 30th, and Mark and I are over at a mutual friend of Smokey and I's house. We'll call him Pedro. Mick and Smokey come over as well, and at this point, our relationship with Mick and Smokey was a bit rocky, but I was willing to make it work because we had so many mutuals together, and I couldn't pass up on the opportunity to drink. Overall, the night was fine. We were getting along as well as you can with all of this tension. However, at the end of the night, when Mick and Smokey decide to leave, I would offer to walk both of them out and share a cigarette with Mick. The four of us all standing on the side of the road making small talk. Out of nowhere, Mick asks me, so, when's O'Neill coming back into town? Seeing as he was in Ireland at this point. Considering Chris and I had been broken up for about 9 months at this point, I was baffled at how he thought I would know. I retort back saying, yeah, you know, wouldn't you know better? You've talked to so-and-so. Referring to the friends who distanced themselves from him because of his excessive drinking and how easily he would burst into arguments with them. These exact friends that distanced themselves from me because of my drinking habits as well. And how I had only gotten worse, especially because I would associate with Mick. Mick made me feel like they had cut both of us off, settling in that idea that it was us against the world. Just a quick side note, these friends never truly cut off Mick. They just didn't want to be around him when he was drunk, and he was always drunk. So to say that they completely cut him off just wasn't true. But he wanted to believe he was a victim. Mick got very upset when I said this, and I said this to hurt him, because clearly him bringing up Chris was intentionally to hurt me. Smokey and Mark stood there as Mick yelled in my face, saying how all these friends had cut him off, how he had moved out here for all of them, and they all turned their backs on him. That I, above anybody else, should know that, which was the reason why I brought it up. I knew that he would get hurt by this, but only because if he was going to be petty about bringing up Chris, I was going to be petty and bring up our friends.
Which is fair. I think that's fair. I think it's a fair jab to give back to somebody who's trying to make you feel bad about something. Why not go lower and just fucking go lower than them? I'll be honest. Sometimes I'm okay with pettiness, and that kind of pettiness, I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that. Mick brought it up first, and they were not in a good place, and fucking Mick asked for it, and he got bitch slapped upside the head. I think it's fair. A-okay. Chris, do you think Mick manipulated Smokey as well? If so, at what point? I don't think he manipulated. I think Smokey is an incredibly manipulative person, right? Like, completely psychopathically crazy. But I think at the same time is that Mick knew the vulnerabilities of Smokey and would use her as a crutch to try and make Veronica jealous, or just to have them as a backup person to fuck. That's at least how I perceive Mick and Smokey's relationship as friends, is that he would just let her stay there as like a backup if, God forbid, something happened with Veronica, because him throwing in Veronica's face, maybe I should just fuck Smokey then, kind of screams that. I don't know. It just seems like Mick and Smokey are both shitty people.
But I wasn't reacting this way. He was reacting this way. When Mick got drunk, he got angry and performatively loud. He paced back and forth, not wanting to let this go, pointing in my face and continuously shouting at me, eventually calming himself down for a brief moment to say bye, and then came in for a hug. I would give him one of those half-assed pat-on-the-back hugs, which caused him to get mad all over again, shouting, "No, no, you can't do that!" After he walks away screaming, "I don't have patience for this!" Walking further down the road, being like, "Fuck!"
She gives him the friend hug. She's like, you know what? It's over. You're getting like a stranger hug. And he proceeds to bitch louder than anyone else at the party. Fuck! Why don't you love me? This guy is a fucking loser. If you need to learn anything about Mick, he's a fucking loser.
Turn to Mark, and it's really quiet. And the only thing that comes to mind is, don't call me. Don't come to my house. We're done. We laugh and we end the night. We had seen Mick drunk and angry so
We're
many
getting
times
to that. Don't worry.
laughable. Recently, a couple months ago in November, Mark brought this event up with Smokey in references to how I wasn't the only person who did something wrong here. To which Smokey claims that Mark is rewriting history, that everything that I just explained to you happened on February 9th, the night of the Smiling Friends premiere. I find it funny that in that message where she accuses Mark of rewriting history, she is quite literally gaslighting him. If only there was some sort of evidence that that event happened on the 30th. It's a good thing that Mick left me a voicemail that night, clearly still drunk, trying to justify yelling at me, which he defines as him escalating the situation, and ultimately saying that he won't apologize.
Yo, listen, I apologize if things escalated to a certain point, but I will say that pointing out the whole and entire friend group thing as not being...
I didn't mean for it to be escalated. Bro.
Situation that impacted me to a certain degree, especially because they were the people I moved out here for. That hit hard. That hit very hard. And especially if you were to ever assume that you didn't know exactly what I meant by that. I feel like if anybody knows that situation, you know better than anybody else. That situation, it killed for a period of time. But, you know, you, for a period of time, and others were like the reason why that was okay. But for you to say that you didn't understand where I was coming from when it came to that situation, or that you felt like, you know what, I did drink tonight, but at the same time, I just feel like there was a certain amount of energy that was not as empathetic as I would have hoped. And
you can't, what do you mean? So you're okay. So he's attributing his freak out to her hug as her not being as empathetic as he wanted to be. This man hasn't learned shit. Like, he'll say, oh, I want to respect her and not be a slave and a master and not worship her and shit. But when she doesn't give him the level of empathy that he is expecting, he flips the fuck out and starts screaming in the middle of a road. Yeah, this guy is definitely not unhinged, guys. All the things I said before, he's definitely not crazy. Like, he's definitely not a manipulative bastard. Hey, I guess I'm an asshole for saying all those awful things about him. This guy's fucking crazy.
It came off as pretty fucking cold, considering everything else. You know what? Not even considering everything else. But, yeah, that bothered me. So, I'm not going to apologize for that. I'm not going to apologize for being fucking bothered by that. The fact that it escalated as it did, that's a bummer. I really hoped that it wouldn't, but I just figured you understood better than most.
This is somebody that had this reaction to the idea of drones holding handguns. So it's not hard to believe that he would start yelling at me about bringing up people who he thought cut him off. So here we have Smokey doing one of two things. Intentionally lying to Mark, trying to convince him that he's remembering things wrong and not bring any attention of the fucked shit Mick and her were doing. Or two, doesn't even remember these events herself. Again, here's Smokey acknowledging an argument about these friends, saying this happened on February 9th, downplaying Mick's actions, while Mick sent me a message proving that this had happened. Not only a week before Smokey claims, but also admits he escalated the situation. And this is the victim we're forced to believe. Somebody who doesn't even remember the events themselves. Going back to Mark's messages with Smokey, I'd like to throw in that Mark finally brought attention to the 2 times Smokey kissed him, where she was drunk at Mick's house. One of those times being on the lips. She completely downplays this, calling it a platonic peck, saying it only happened once, when I was personally there to witness both times.
The more we dig deeper into this video and learning about Smokey and Mick, this is maybe the most toxic group of people I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, just in every retrospect, these 2 people are some of the most toxic fucking weirdos on planet Earth. If you guys can't see why these people are fucking insane, you're lost. That means you're crazy. If you can't see why these 2 people are insane, at least from Veronica's point of view, you're crazy. Sorry.
Along with a third party who was also there. She claims that Mark didn't bring this up with her at the time because it meant that he never cared about it until now. But let's remember the situation. Mark only really was close to me, and to spend time with me means that he had to spend time at Mick's house, already knowing he was seen as a burden. So starting issues is the last thing that he would want to do. Mark has lived in Ireland his whole life. People don't just walk around with that kind of affection, and it caught him off guard thinking it was weird. This is nothing major, but just to highlight just how much Smokey downplays ever having done anything wrong. I'd like to see how this would be treated if Mark drunkenly kissed Smokey and told her that she was overreacting to a platonic peck. A common argument, but I feel it still holds weight to this interaction. That Smokey is telling Mark that he shouldn't care about this, telling him how he should feel, but I'm manipulative? If you want to talk about the Smiling Friends night though, Smokey, we can talk about it. For those unaware, the series Smiling Friends was premiering on Adult Swim, and there was a big release party for only the cast and crew to celebrate. Mick had been messaging me earlier that day, telling me that he looks forward to running into a particular person there, obviously referring to Chris O'Neill. I joke with him saying that it would be funny if we could both clothesline him. This was common between us. Like I said, we both bonded over the mutual disdain for Chris and often made jokes at his expense. Mark and I had plans to go to our friend Pedro's house to hang out, since Edward was back in town, and I wanted to see him. Hours after us hanging out with them, Mick and Smokey walked through the door. Smokey clearly looking strung out of her mind. Mick opens up his jacket to reveal a Smiling Friends t-shirt, telling everybody at Pedro's that he had just gotten back from the release party. He proceeds to say how he has a funny story, that he saw Chris O'Neill at the party, that he walked right up to him and went to him and shook his hand. And according to him, that Chris was scared, shaking where he stood, gasping. Mick then would say that he shook his hand pathetically, and then he walked away laughing, while Chris would be standing there alone for the rest of the party. I didn't like this, but not for the reasons Mick thought. Let me add, Mick intentionally brought Smokey along to a party that she was never invited to. It was common knowledge for those invited that no +1s were allowed. Some artists who had worked on the show couldn't even come to the premiere because they weren't allowed to bring their spouses. But here comes secondary voice actor Mick Lauer bringing...
I love that clip. I love that clip so much. These photos are great. I love that video. I unironically think that's the funniest shit. Knowing what I know about this guy, it unironically makes me fucking laugh when I see this video. You got great photos. No.
Along this woman with no connection to the creators, or even asked them if she could come. You're at a party celebrating a release of your supposed friend's first television show being aired, yet you were more concerned about making a point to Chris that you wanted to start a confrontation. Because again, Mick made it evident to all of us that he didn't like Chris, and in turn, Chris didn't like him. Mick would later hear from Mark that I didn't like him coming up to Chris. He assumed that my issue was him being chummy with Chris. But don't worry, Mick, I knew what you were trying to do. You were trying to send a message that you didn't like him, and then gloat about it afterwards at Pedro's house thinking that I would applaud you for this. If you don't believe this interaction happened, luckily enough, Mick had left me a voicemail corroborating this story.
Hey dude, I hope you're okay. I'm not piling on. Yeah, I hope you're doing okay. And, yeah, I don't know. I can't imagine what's going on. But whatever it is, I hope it gets sorted. And, that you're taking care of yourself. And, as disappointing as some things are, people care. As a side note, just because, why not? The Smiling Friends party, for some reason it hasn't been brought up, but I have a feeling that was a source of some contention, and I specifically
Mickey is constantly self-reporting, like unironically.
Which seemed to upset you in the moment. I wasn't sure if you were exaggerating how you felt at the time, but I have since heard that, no, that actually did bother you. I don't know if you get what I was saying when I said I did that. And I just want to clarify that that was very much a power move. And I think everybody else understood that. I don't know why you didn't, which is kind of going back to the point of, hey, when I...
That's so pathetic. You're doing a power move because you don't like a guy. You walk up to the guy. You try to intimidate him and then walk away laughing. That is maybe the most pussy shit I've ever heard in my entire life. That's like doing the Donald Trump handshake where he grabs your hand and doesn't let you go and he keeps trying to pull you into him. It's like that. That's not a power move. That's just you being a fucking loser. I don't understand how you can interpret that as a power move.
For some reason, I feel like the worst intentions or whatever, that you tend to assume those things. Because it was pretty clear to everybody else, I think, that was very much a, hey, I'm coming into the lion's den and I'm not afraid of you. Like, I don't care what fucking influence you had over everybody else. I'm going to fucking address you. You can't, like, I'm not just going to, like, shy away. You know what I mean? And it was probably the most uncomfortable he was that night, and I expected that. But that is why I did it. It wasn't to mend things or to be chummy at all. So... yeah, I don't know how it could have been read that way, but that's neither here nor there. I figured might as well put that out there. I don't know if we're ever going to hang out again, but I certainly didn't want that to be misconstrued in your mind, because despite everything, I do care about your opinion, and I do care about you as a person. So, yeah, with that off my chest, I hope this doesn't stop you from or slow you down from working on yourself and working on your goals and all that kind of stuff. If anything, this is, I suppose, an opportunity to do even more, to dive in even more. So,
this dude just needs to leave her alone.
Yeah. Hope you're okay. You don't have to respond. And
just leave her alone.
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah,
just
Mick,
leave
you
her
really intimidated him.
alone.
It's not like everybody who had witnessed it later said that your display was sad and cowardly. Let me give you a description from a friend's point of view, who had witnessed all of this. Mick saw Chris at an open bar with one of our friends. Mick beelined to him, even pushing his way through somebody else to get to Chris. He offered his hand and in a cracked voice said, "Hey." Instantly, it was apparent to them that Mick was drunk, and immediately turned around and walked away. Chris had no idea what had even happened because Mick fled so fast. You really showed him, Mick. I can't believe you were willing to walk into the Lion's Den and say, "I'm not afraid." The Lion's Den being Chris O'Neill at your friend's premiere party. Chris didn't even touch his hand. They all thought this was a pathetic display. Even with this failed attempt at a confrontation, the night went on without anyone really even realizing or caring that Mick was trying to confront Chris. Despite what Mick likes to think, Chris nor anybody was affected by this so-called power move. After this irritating interaction, I knew that I had to stop being friends with Mick. I was tired of the arguing. I was tired of him constantly telling me that I misinterpreted what he said or did or does. His drunken demeanor was so obnoxious, and Smokey tagging along made everything all the more gross.
Yeah, honestly, I would be getting a restraining order at this fucking point against Smokey and Mick. I would just get a full-blown restraining order. These people are absolutely insane. These two specific people are fucking crazy, but the DaftPina stuff is interesting later.
At this point, I just started ignoring him, which is when he started sending me a string of messages.
Hey, dude. Hope you're doing well. Haven't talked to you in a while. Haven't heard from you. Hope you're good. I'm sure you're busy. I guess I'm just sending a message because I want to make sure everything's okay. I felt like several days ago we were talking about figuring out a time to hang out in the next week or so, and now I feel like, I don't know, I could be reading into it, but it feels like a bit of a ghosting. Again, yeah, maybe.
It had only been 4 days. Oh my God. Oh no, that's a pathetic phone call. I feel like you're ghosting me. It's been 4 fucking days. It's been 4 days, dude. It's been 4 fucking days. I feel like you're ghosting me. I'm getting the feeling that you don't want to talk to me anymore. Oh my God, please, 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 please talk to me. Please talk to me. Please talk to me. Please talk to me. That's how this is coming across. This is like scary shit. This is shit I would be like nervous to go outside.
I'm reading into it. I guess I just don't know what's going on. But hopefully we can chat. And, I guess if for some reason you just wanted time or space away from me being around, totally understand and totally respect that. But if there is an issue, a greater issue, I would... I'd appreciate talking about it if you want to. And if you don't, then just let me know if you want me to stop bothering you. Not trying to sound sad about or, whatever. I just don't know what's going on. All right.
I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's because you continuously send messages to this girl, causing toxic situations to occur, that you were somebody that influenced her alcoholism. Maybe you love bombed her multiple times, that she doesn't want to continue talking to you. And you turn around and say, I don't know what's going on. Bullshit, you don't know what's going on. You literally self-reported yourself 2 times. That gigantic wall of text that you sent her as a love note / you can always look back on this and know how much I love you no matter what happens, which is fucking weird. Then there's the situations with all these fucking phone calls. How don't you realize this isn't your fault?
Have a good one. Hope to talk to you soon. All right, bye.
I would eventually respond to him and Smokey after Pedro let me know that it wasn't cool that I outright ghosted them, which he was right. Out of everything that we've been through, I at least owed them the respect of telling them I didn't want to be their friends anymore. So I reread this whole message that I sent to Smokey because this is my goodbye message to her. This is the last thing that I had said to her, and I have never once reached out to her since, right? I'm pretty fucking nice to her. For somebody who is their so-called abuser, like, I am accepting my faults here. I'm taking accountability where I'm wrong. I call myself a bitch. I point out that I could have been a better friend. Everything. And all I ever pointed out about her was I felt like she was self-seeking. I felt like she only wanted mixed interests, and that was her goal. You know, I was completely nice to this person and accepted where I went wrong. So for her to run this hate train on me, claiming I'm her abuser, is just beside me. Now,
which is ridiculous, because there is a point where there were some tweets that we went over in the Just Stop live stream that we did, where Smokey comes out with all these allegations against Veronica and says somebody was a piece of shit to her, manipulated her, abused her, all of these things. But we read this section of these DMs that Veronica sent to Smokey early on in the stream, and they came across relatively normal as like, yeah, I admit my faults, but at the same time, you also have your faults, and I apologize for mine. But Smokey turns around and says that she never gave her the benefit of the doubt or abused and manipulated Smokey. That doesn't make any sense, bitch.
Now, this is a time where I need to explain my alcoholism. I've been drinking daily for almost a year now. The limit's getting higher the more I'm consuming. I've gone from doing White Claws to Mick tricks, now to just straight vodka. Mark is now staying at an Airbnb with Ricardo, who would come back into town. My habits would continue, making each night a party. One night, I'm meant to be going over to Pedro's house because his roommate, and I'll call him Chandler, had invited me to go to a party that he was throwing. Mick and Smokey were in Vegas at the time, so Chandler was watching Mick's dog Jojo. Mark had asked if he can come with me that night, but I was hesitant because I knew that if Mark came with me that I would have to slow down on my drinking. I didn't like that Mark held me accountable to my habits and felt that this was my opportunity to have a night where I can get completely drunk. Mark ended up making plans with Ricardo to go to Santa Monica Pier, so it all worked out for me to sustain this habit of mine. That day, I started drinking from 2 p.m., straight vodka, along with some White Claws as chaser. I even tell Chandler that I'm bringing vodka. Here's that text. This is what I was using to pregame with, even though I was already planning on going over to Chandler's to pregame with him. I arrive at Pedro's and Chandler's and we start drinking. I want to say now, this whole day I had revolved around my addiction. I wanted to be away from those who held me accountable. I wanted to be in an environment where I can drink heavily, and I wanted to be selfish. I didn't care about how anybody felt but myself. And when I drink, I don't feel anything but indulgence. That night, Chandler took Mick's dog for a walk, and I tell him everything that I'd been through with Mick and Smokey. He was surprised that I'd even had a relationship with Mick, and says outright that he didn't like Smokey, that she had a big mouth and he didn't really trust her. Ironic. We go back to the party, and this is where my remembrance of how things happened aren't entirely clear, because we continuously take shots with a group of people, and each time somebody coming, joining in for more group shots, all while still having my drink refilled by Chandler, who praises his ability of making tasty drinks. Chandler said that he had a gift for me, and it was a patch that he had received while working with William Shatner. He knew that I was a Trekkie, and so he went into his room to retrieve it. I will say, I remember being pretty disgusted by the room itself, but not because it was messy, just because the place...
Honestly, the major criticism I have for Veronica so far is that she's a Trekkie. Come on.
This was kind of a shithole that had roaches. And we
Star
go back
Wars
out to greet
better.
more guests and take more group shots.
Star
and eventually
Wars
we
way
go back
better.
into his room. Now, I'm not for certain if I initiated this, but if I did, clearly I'm not in my right mind, which doesn't excuse these actions, but paints a picture of how I was. I know for certain Chandler was laying on the bed first, and I sat down next to him. Chandler described the situation to Mark that I was shit-talking Mark, saying that I didn't care about him or me or anything, telling him that I wanted him for months, which honestly, I'd only really known him for when I'd go over to Pedro's, and even then, he wasn't there all the time. But I was willing to say anything and do whatever I wanted. Again, I'm not in my right mind. Because clearly, if I was sober, this wasn't something I would have wanted. But I did it, and that's all that matters. Alcohol isn't the excuse, but it was the fuel to bring me to betray Mark and degrade myself, and take part in something that would eventually hurt him and me, but most of all him. Because Mark did nothing wrong here. I had no reason to do what I did, other than for my own selfish and self-seeking ways. I don't remember the sex, but I do remember when I was aware of my surroundings. I was in the bathroom, cleaning myself up, hoping everybody at the party wouldn't see. When I walked out, there was nobody left from the party. I sat down, and I'm not sure how long I ended up waiting for everybody to leave. But by the time I'd gotten back to Mark's Airbnb, he was already asleep. The next morning, incredibly hungover, Ricardo wanted to film a Speed Supersonic video. I begged Mark to get me ibuprofen, and once he was gone, looked for whatever alcohol I could in the Airbnb, hoping to cure my hangover with some hair of the dog. Knowing what I'd done, I called Chandler and told him not to tell Mark or anybody. I attempted to keep him on my good side by complimenting him and expressing that I needed to quit drinking and start on Ash Wednesday.
This is one of her largest mistakes. And I feel like she could still be, she obviously came out with this and talked about this more in depth. It's a fucked up thing to cheat on your partner. But when it comes to addiction, especially with alcohol, you will become selfish and do things that you normally wouldn't. And I feel bad for Veronica. Does that excuse the action of her cheating on Mark? No, it doesn't. But they worked through it. And were able to build a life together after the fact, which you're going to hear about later on in the video. It's awful that happened, but it's not something that should have been brought up into the public in the first place. It was a mistake, and she even admits that it was a mistake. The next part of this story is going to piss off every person in this chat. I guarantee it.
Chandler's a religious guy, so he's expressing to me how great it is that I'm seeking the Lord. This guy, who praises himself for his strength in religion, was fully aware of having sex with a woman who he knew was in a relationship. He would admit to Mark that I had told him that we were still together. Something to note here. Once Mark found out, he approached Chandler about this, who initially avoided him, but he would eventually give him a story which he later admits wasn't the truth, as he wanted to spare Mark's feelings, as if he cared about how Mark felt, or that Mark wouldn't already be hurt by what had happened. He later tells Mark the real story, but at this point, Mark has been told so many different versions of the story from so many different people, including Smokey, who was in Las Vegas at the time, willfully involving herself in a situation while admitting to Sonny that this was none of her business. Here's that message. Chandler didn't keep my lie. He immediately told Mick, who told Smokey, who told Sonny, who screenshotted it and sent it to Mark.
If you can't see why if I see any comments on this video that's like, well, Mick and Smokey are the real victims here, I am going to put you on blast and laugh at you to your face. I'm going to straight up make fun of you, your thought process, everything that is about you. You will be torn asunder, because the reason why is because the situation being is that she told somebody, and then that person immediately goes to tell Mick, who tells a crazy person, who tells Mark about all this shit. It's a chain of toxic people that continue to allow these things to happen. You're insane if you think that Mick and Smokey are good people throughout this. You're insane. That's at least my perspective on the situation based on Veronica's information she is posting here.
During all of this, I was hiding in my home, avoiding Mark and keeping my distance from everybody because of the amount of shame I had felt for what I had done. Prior to Mark finding out about the cheating, I contacted Pedro because he was there that night, and I called him to ask him not to tell anybody about what I had done, that I was going to break up with him and peace out. But before I could, Mark had messaged me about breaking up with me, saying that I made everything complicated and that all of this is way too stressful for him. Sitting alone with my shame and my guilt, and reaching what I would call my emotional bottom, I knew that things needed to change. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like that I was drinking all the time. I didn't like the toll it was taking on my body and my mental state. I reached out to a friend who I knew was in the program and asked him if he would take me to my first AA meeting. This would be March 2nd. Eventually, I reached out to one of my best friends. I'll call him Greg. He was the only person I'd reached out to at the time, and told him that I really, really needed a friend right now. After listening and comforting me, I'd let Greg know that I'd written a letter for Mark, explaining everything that I had done. In Just Stop's video, he says this is how Mark heard about the cheating. This is untrue. Greg called Mark, letting him know that he was going to deliver a letter to him from me. Mark saying that he wouldn't accept that, and if there was something that I needed to say, I had to say it to his face. Greg drove to Sunset Boulevard,
Digital Homic with the 5, Kristen Ark, but what if Mick and Smokey are the victims? It's definitely, at this current moment, with the information that is presented to us, Mick and Smokey are not victims. If anything, they're the perpetrators of a lot of the information and a lot of the situations that led to the instability in Veronica's life. But, I mean, enabled the instability in Veronica's life. Veronica already, you can't take away from the fact that Veronica needed to fix herself. But she also did surround herself with people that inflamed those bad behaviors. That's the biggest issue here, is that these two people continued to gaslight the situations more and more and more, which caused Veronica to go down a deeper and deeper hole. Now, does that mean Veronica is excluded from all the actions that she took, like cheating on Mark? No. But it didn't help in the first place that these two people were there excessively adding fuel to the fire and making it worse. The love bombing, the lying, the manipulation, Smokey going behind the scenes and fucking telling everyone everything to make Veronica look like a bitch. All of those things contributed to an already deteriorating situation that was Veronica's mindset. No, I know you're joking. I'm saying that to the people that are going to read that and completely be like, well, Veronica, well, she fucked up. She cheated on Mark. I need to emphasize that she made the mistake but owned up to it. The other two people have not done that.
Picked up Mark and drove all the way back to my parents' house just to bring Mark to me. We proceeded to have a 3-hour-long discussion about all of this, questions Mark would ask and things that I would answer, but mostly Mark expressing that what I had done was kind and that I'm a cunt for treating him this way, but that eventually he would try to be my friend. Again, before Mark found out about this cheating, he had already broken up with me and accepted wanting to be friends, which just made me break down crying because to be met with kindness after doing something so evil, I just couldn't understand how he could be so nice to me, how I could treat him this way and do all of this to him, that him above all people who didn't deserve this, that I pulled him into this world and forced him to endure not only Mick, but Smokey and drinking and now Chandler. After this, Mark and I would hang out doing simple things like mini golf or seeing Uncharted or going to the beach, but mostly talking. It felt like all the chaos had finally ended, that even though all of this had happened, in some way there's starting to be some normalcy now. I continued frequenting meetings, Mark continued to work, and we'd spend our time together in the most pleasant ways possible. Anytime Mark needed to discuss anything, I was open and willing to be honest and upfront about my actions.
This is the difference between Mark and Mick. Mick smothered this woman to absolute death and didn't respect her boundaries. Mark actually supported her and respected those boundaries and still somehow, some way, I don't know how he did it, still maintained being friends with her after she cheated on him. Due to her addiction. That is that is ridiculous that Mark put himself through that shit because he loved this woman so much. Mick is a crazy person while Mark is a level-headed person. Yes, is it weird that he's stuck with somebody who cheated on him? Sure, if you look at it that way. But not every relationship's the same. Not every person is the same. Not everybody's going to fit to the mold of what is normal. It's just not how that works. Mark, I give Mark the fucking massive I can commend that man for going through this and helping out somebody in need and then somehow finding a way to make a relationship still work with them. Fuck.
Skipping ahead briefly, months and months later, around September I think, we were talking to Greg. We knew at the time that he was still mutuals with Mick and Smokey. At this point, their relationship had been established, but she still to this day lives in Vegas. Greg would frequent our house for dinner and hangouts, and he would always bring them up to us, unprompted, mind you, telling us what new news was going on with them, such as Smokey crying about Mick not wanting her to move in yet, that he would rather build an extension on his home so she could have her own room, so he would still have his own space from her, or how...
How does this Smokey bitch think that she's moving in with Mick and still pursues the man, even though he says, I don't really want her to move in and I'd rather build a whole extension of my home to avoid this bitch than actually have her in my own space? That is a crazy person's delusion that the person they are pursuing is in love with them. That's crazy people talk. This is why I think Smokey's crazy.
Mick openly admitted that Smokey was problematic and had a lot of issues when she would go back to Vegas. True or not, this is what we were told. And mind you, this wasn't anything we asked for, even if it wasn't true. But Greg would tell us anyways. This is how we would constantly hear about them. At a certain point, I would have to tell him when we were hanging out that I didn't want to hear about Mick and Smokey. But interestingly, he would talk about how during the time I cheated on Mark...
There's no way her pussy's that good. There's no way. Like, even if she has, like, crazy means good sex. Even if she does that, right? I don't think that's enough for me to fucking... continue talking to you after I hear all this other shit about you and that you are obsessed with me. I'd be like, you know what? Sex was great, but get the fuck out of here. Goodbye. No more talking.
Smokey spread around the narrative that I accused Chandler of sexually assaulting me, which is a malicious lie that wasn't true. Again, I had already told Smokey I didn't want to be her friend at this point, so she wanted to make sure none of our mutuals would still talk to me, which ended up happening, as if what I did wasn't bad enough already. Greg brought them up yet again, and offhandedly referred to the consent thing, to which we asked confusingly, what consent thing? He proceeded to inform us about a story that had been going around, that I accused Chandler of taking advantage of me while I was drunk, that I claimed sexual assault and that I didn't give him my consent. Initially, this confused us, but back whenever all this happened, Chandler had left me a final voicemail before I blocked him, because of course, I would block him if I were to continue my friendship with Mark, asking me why I was going around telling people lies, that I said that I didn't give him my consent.
Hey there, Veronica. I know it's weird leaving a voicemail in 2022 and I can just text, but I just have to ask you something. Why are you spreading lies to people?
This is going to be the part of the live stream that I'm pretty sure the chat is going to lose their fucking minds on. I'm pretty sure the chat's going to fucking explode with the information that is about to be dropped here.
And why are people led to assume that what we did wasn't consensual? You told me when you were going to AA and starting on this new path of life that you were starting fresh, that you wanted to tell Mark because you didn't want to start this new chapter of your life on a lie. And I supported that. I love that. You told me you're turning to God and Christ to help you, and I love that. But the lies you're spreading, what you're telling people, Veronica, that's completely wrong, and I know you know that. If you're looking to get a fresh start on life, you're starting with one of the most heinous lies you can ever do, and not just to me, but you're lying to God and Christ. Veronica, I really hope you come to your senses and do the right thing. Please, I'm begging you. But as always, I'm keeping you in my prayers because I truly wish and I hope that you are getting the help you need. But please,
I was confused about this at the time, but again, for the sake of the friendship with Mark, I chose not to continue communication with him. Unbeknownst to me, there was a narrative that had formed, that I had claimed sexual assault, that I had said that I did not consent. We were all baffled to where this came from, but Mark finally realized where this came from, and it came from you, Smokey. Mark had been venting about this situation to a close friend of his. This friend told Mark that a blackout drunk person cannot give consent.
I'm gonna let this play.
That's all. That same day, Mark tells Smokey that a blackout drunk person can't give consent. Mark then goes on to say how I said that Chandler wasn't as drunk as I was, which clearly must have been the case since he seemed to recount the night pretty well. A lot of what I explained to you about that night came from his final message to Mark, where that seems consistent to what I remember. He then says that while he's not excusing me for what I had done, that a person who is drunk can't give consent, and that Chandler knew what he was doing, referring to the fact that he knew that we were still together, which Smokey even says herself. So Smokey took a question that Mark posed, and intentionally or not, without asking him to clarify, went and started telling all of our mutuals that I claimed Chandler sexually assaulted me, which I never ever said. If you want to argue the correlation between these, then let's get the dates here. I cheated on Mark February 26th. Chandler had been messaging me until March 8th, with no mention of me accusing him of not giving consent. Also on March 8th, Mark talks to his friend, where they bring up how drunk people can't give consent, which on the exact same day, Mark says to Smokey. Now tell me how suddenly, the very next day, March 9th, I get a voicemail from Chandler where he is acting surprised, saying that I'm going around telling people I didn't give him consent. It's almost like Smokey ran with this story without asking Mark to clarify or clear things up, or intentionally went and lied to everybody so they could have a reason to hate me and no longer speak to me. Nobody ever reached out to me to ask my side other than Chandler. And because
Listen, chat. Listen. I know the meme. In this community is that women are evil. I know it's a meme. It's a solid meme. It's a solid meme that women are evil, right? It's a solid meme. You can't trust e-whores. But Smokey, this is a direct conversation of Smokey. If you ever see this, you fucking troglodyte cunt. You made, intentionally or not, a narrative among her friend group, Veronica's, and professionally, to people that work with them, that she claimed SA on something that was not the case. Yes, she made a mistake. Yes, she was drunk. But Veronica, in her words, has never expressly said the words that the individual known as Chandler in this video sexually assaulted her. You lied. You lied, or you didn't get the story right, because you are a vindictive cunt. That's what you are, Smokey. Based on the information that has been provided here, the DM evidence, the timestamps, everything, you are a bitch. You're a fucking whore. That's what you are. And if you don't like that, change your life, because you are nothing but a fucking scumbag for trying to push a false SA allegation because you didn't do the right due diligence thing and then started opening your fucking mouth to random people. Congrats, Smokey. If anyone thinks Smokey is a good person after this live stream or any of the situations involving this video, you're out of your fucking mind. You're out of your fucking mind.
Because of me wanting Mark in my life, I chose not to respond. That was my mistake, seeing as everybody would believe this lie without question to this day, never wanting to hear my side. I don't care what you think about what I did. This right here is evil and psychopathic of Smokey. That when Mark in his most emotional state would try and talk to her about this, and she in turn would take something that he posed as a question and tried to make it fact. She's painting a picture and calling it a photograph. I also want to point out how in the very next message to Smokey, Mark tells her that I had not been blaming anyone else for what I did, that I've only taken full accountability for my actions. But I guess it doesn't really fit the narrative she's trying to spin. I had never spoken to Smokey about the situation, yet she felt the need to spearhead this lie. Again, she was in Vegas when this whole thing happened. I need to reiterate this because this is something people have believed about me since March of 2022, but I never accused Chandler of sexually assaulting me or not giving consent, and I think Smokey knows this, which is why she never mentioned this in the Just Stop video, something that definitely would have made this manipulative abuser point a slam dunk. But she knew that Mark had the evidence of this, because Greg mentions this to her on Halloween, 2022. Smokey is an evil person who manipulated all of our mutuals into believing this lie about me, and nobody cared enough to hear the truth, and probably still don't, because they've gone this long believing this and never once reached out to me, so I don't put it past them continuing to do the same thing, acting like this isn't a problem, while saying in private how crazy Smokey is. It's truly baffling to me how you can acknowledge that a person like Smokey is crazy and unhinged and immature, but would still believe her lies on a situation that she wasn't even in the same state for. Again, all signs here point to having come from Smokey. This consent thing was never mentioned, and somehow the day after Mark asks this question, this is a story that everybody is believing. What I did was bad, but that does not justify believing every little thing you hear about me and treating it as fact. Before any of this, back in January, Mark and I had booked an interview with Jeff Kinney in Boston. Of course, all of this puts a wrench into that, and I told Mark that I didn't want to go. But over the course of the next month, from our subsequent conversations about all of this and the honesty that I've been having with him, I'd let him know that I'd be willing to go, and even follow through on my Ireland trip that we had planned. During this whole month, I'd been with Mark nonstop. The only times of us being apart would be when I would go to sleep or when I'd go to meetings. During the Ireland trip, Mark and I would have many long talks about how we still had feelings towards one another. We agreed that if we felt this way towards one another, that we would be willing to try again. This time being completely honest with each other and me sticking to my sobriety. Then we
Guys, hey, remember everybody that had an issue and kind of uncomfortable with the fact that they got back together and that they're happy? Remember those retards in the Just Stop comment section? All those people that really need to know what it's like to love somebody and not infer on a relationship that they have no fucking idea about. Based on the situation that Veronica is presenting here, they found a way to work past those things. They found a way to work past it. They were alone. They were away from the toxicity. They were away from everything. Her sobriety is what changed. She's making better adjustments in her life, and her and Mark decided to get back together. because they worked through it. And to the retards that think that she manipulated Mark into that, look at how Mark handled the situation according to the information we have talked about here. That he did the respectful thing, that he took his time with her. Yes, there were moments of weakness, but every person has that. But still, he respected the boundaries that she wanted and was honest with her, unlike the other people.
We'd see where it would go. Obviously, you know where that ended. Mark and I got married in August. Just Stop makes the assumption that we celebrated our...
Fuck you, tipster. Fuck you. Yeah, I respect that shit hardcore, Diesel. This is... Like, no matter what bullshit came up, they found a way to respect each other's boundaries and actually fix things about themselves. That's what I fucking like. That's why I don't have an issue with them getting married or any of that bullshit like retards do.
honeymoon in DC, which is a lie. The trip we took there was what made us realize that we loved each other and hated spending time apart. So Mark agreed to come back to LA for as long as his visa would allow him, and by the end of it, we both got married. A week later in early September, we got our apartment together. Which, let me just say, Smokey, in your long blackmail post demanding a response from me, you point out that I moved to your boyfriend's neighborhood. Again, the neighborhood he lives in because he intended on me living with him. This was the first apartment Mark and I saw that not only accepted our application, but also accepted our dogs. So we took it. If you really think that we would make a life decision like getting an apartment just to spite you, then you really are delusional.
That is crazy. Dude, that is some schizophrenic shit. That's like... Listen, you moved into a neighborhood, and you're my boyfriend. How fucking dare you? You're doing this to spite me. Dude, they haven't thought about you in God knows how long. They're having a wonderful time. They found an apartment. They moved in together. And you're going to chalk that up to, they're trying to take me down. They're trying to move to my boyfriend's house. They're trying to harass me. Bitch, you crazy. Smokey, you a dumb bitch. You a dumb bitch, and I hope you know that.
Halloween rolls around and we throw a really big party with all of our close friends. I want to add that this was the first Halloween party I'd ever had where there was no alcohol, and it was so much fun. Being surrounded by people who truly care about me and nobody is acting a fool. On Halloween night, the same night Greg told Smokey that she was wrong about the consent thing, she goes on Twitter to expose not only my marriage, but also what I had confided into her about Chris and I. Both things none of her business to spread. I was advised by my sponsor not to respond to Smokey, but I also didn't want to give this delusional psychopathic person who would lie about me the satisfaction, which only resulted in her tweeting more about me. The next post being the Do Your Step 9 post, which I need to point out, doing your Step 9 isn't a case of rushing through the steps because somebody feels like they deserve an amends. This way of viewing it is incredibly disrespectful, but also shows that Smokey has no...
This bit, dude, every time something about Smokey comes up, it makes me feel amends with people. It takes a lot of time to get to that part. And Smokey demanding that somebody... How long does it take for somebody to reach their step 9 to me because I'm the victim by... is crazy. This bitch has been talking behind the scenes this whole time. I love it. I love that. I love that so much. Are we having frame issues? Are we having frame issues? Frozen issues? Okay, no, I think we're good. I think we're good. The stream fix? Yeah, I think we're good. All right.
No knowledge about step work. Currently, I'd been working on my step 4, which is taking a fearless and moral inventory of myself, filling notebooks with my resentments towards people and what I had done and where I went wrong. Smokey, if you weren't so unhappy with your life and could have stopped publicly tweeting about me, you would have received what I wanted to offer you on Thanksgiving. Knowing that Mick was out of town because he publicly posted it, and you being home alone to watch his dog in his house, let me be clear, I didn't pity you. I saw opportunity to break bread with you and wanted to offer for you to come over and celebrate with me, Mark, and his family who was in town. But before I had done this, I needed to run this not only by Mark, but my sponsor. Mark was fine with it, with his only concern being that you're kind of crazy and he didn't know what kind of unhinged shit that you would do in front of his family. Rightfully so. But my sponsor advised against it, saying that if this wasn't completely resentment-free, that this wouldn't be a positive interaction, especially considering Smokey's public animosity towards me. So I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, because we see from Just Stop's video that this was all in the works well before Thanksgiving, and he admitted to Mark in that call that all of this stemmed from your tweet, so you already knew what you were planning on doing. The least you could have done was been upfront about it instead of lying directly to Mark. Once you made your post threatening to leak his DMs back in March, he reached out to you and said that he wanted no part in this, especially not his private messages from such a stressful time for him. You proceeded to tell Mark whether or not you leaked his DMs was none of his business.
Oh my fucking god. Hey, can you do this thing? I know you're upset at my wife right now, but it was a really stressful time in my life when I sent you that stuff, and I no longer feel that way. Can you not leak those DMs? And the response is, you have no right to that, or like, just none of his business to leak his own private messages. This bitch needs to be put in an insane asylum. This bitch needs to be put in an insane asylum, like fucking locked up in a goddamn padded room. How is it not his business? It's his own private DMs with you. Unless there was something in there that was criminal offense worthy, there's no reason to leak that shit. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Oh, man, I'm just reeling from the cunting behavior. I'm reeling from how much of a cunt this person is.
To which he rightfully informed you that it was entirely his business, and whether or not they got leaked was in your hands. You continued to say that I needed to do my step 9 and make amends to you, where he told you that looking at it that way was not only disrespectful, but a completely ignorant way of viewing it. And I think anybody currently in the program could attest to this. But Smokey didn't care. She just wanted me to acknowledge her. This was when Mark brought up the instances where Mick would yell at me, acknowledging not only January 30th, but also the time with the phone call, which Smokey wasn't present for, as well as the kissing thing, where Smokey brought up the platonic peck excuse, and whether intentionally or not, lied about the dates about Mick screaming in front of me, showing how unreliable of a source Smokey really is, considering this can easily be disproven, which I've already shown you. At this point, Smokey blocked him on Discord, despite telling Sunny that there was no conversation she wasn't willing to have, to which Mark had to send it to her on Twitter. By that time, it was getting pretty late, so we hit the hay, and woke up to multiple messages from Smokey, with the most important and damning message of all, Smokey agreeing that Mark had no part in this and would not share his DMs. Look where we are now. Like I said before, this is the person that you were all believing and sympathizing for. This person who has continuously lied and gaslit and sought out attention, leaking the information of somebody she called a victim, saying that their voice doesn't matter. She also brought up something completely unrelated to try and put ideas in Mark's head that I was trying to pursue other men, randomly bringing up one of Mick's friends, who I had met a small handful of times, saying that I had been messaging him more, along with, I wonder why that is.
Why is everyone on that side of the internet so fucking brain dead? I don't know. That's the thing. If you continue to watch like child cartoons, apparently it turns you into a freak. But the thing is that Smokey isn't a creator. She's just a fan of a creator that ended up in these people's lives somehow, which is fucking ridiculous. That this person who has no creative influence whatsoever has somehow started a complete trend of degeneracy. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Heavily implying that I'm trying to pursue him. No evidence, by the way. Nothing to go off of. She just wanted Mark to think that there was something going on. That is gaslighting, and that is manipulation. Trying to plant an idea in Mark's head in the hopes that he'll think something is going on and divorce me. Yet I'm the one being called the manipulative abuser. The same day after Mark had this conversation with Smokey, where she blatantly lies about Mick yelling in my face, and the platonic peck comment, Mick tweets out vaguely about this conversation, saying, be honest, be chill. If you're needing to bend the truth in order to look in the mirror, maybe take a moment to consider it. If you operate in assumptions, confirmation bias, or straight up just know you're not being honest, consider being better. Folks around you know already. Once again, ironic. Let me talk about all these abuse comments, by the way, because Smokey loves using the word abuser, but never backs it up with anything. Instead, opting to simply use a blanket term, hoping that she says it enough that people would start believing it. Yet all her examples of my so-called abuse has nothing to do with her. The stuff with Chris, breaking up with Mick, what happened with Mark, none of these situations involve her, yet she thinks that she has to be the one to say this stuff publicly, despite me knowing at least 2 of those people never wanted that. Mark openly expressing to her that he did not give her permission to share his DMs. But Smokey has to, because if she only made posts focusing on what I did to her, then nobody would care. You want to know what my abuse towards Smokey was, where all of this stems from? I said that Smokey was my best friend, and then I said she wasn't. That's it. The reality of the situation is, anybody who I'd been drinking and partying with daily for months is somebody who I would have called my best friend. But I didn't drop Smokey out of nowhere. I dealt with her asking to fuck my boyfriend for closure. I dealt with her constantly trying to pursue Edward and crying when things didn't go her way. I dealt with her telling me everything was fine to my face, yet
I still can't get over how flat her ass is. It's fucking disturbing. It's literally a washboard. Who would fuck you? Like, there's no ass. There's nothing. It's like one of those ironing boards, dude. Like, what the fuck? What is the point? Does she have big tits? No. She's got an all right face, but that's the face of a crazy person. Who would fuck you?
would get drunk and pass out in Mick's recording booth. But at a certain point, it became too much, and she wasn't somebody who I wanted in my life anymore as I was trying to improve. That is my crime here. I think throughout this video, I've proven pretty well that Smokey has done quite a lot of shitty things to me. Do I get to call her my abuser? Of course not. But Smokey is petty, and if there's one thing she loves, it's attention. So she'll continue to call me her abuser despite having nothing that actually shows that it is true. Because it isn't true, and there's a part of her deep down that knows that. Like, all these tweets are a result of her desperately trying to convince herself that she's a victim. Which is funny, seeing her treatment of Mark, someone who she constantly uses as a victim in her posts, making it evident how much she really cares about what a real victim has to say. And while I've been trying to do nothing but move on and improve my life for the past 11 months, all she continuously has tried doing is dragging me back into this mess that I want no part in. If you truly were happy with your life right now, Smokey, I can imagine you wouldn't be begging for sympathy on Twitter for all the stuff I've done that doesn't even-
She looks like aloe piss. Tomato Man, no! Holy shit, no! No!
pertain to you. Maybe that's why you sit around and cry to your friends about Mick not wanting you to move in, or endlessly text them when you find out that we're in the same room together. I hear about it all, Smokey, but you don't see me running to Twitter. You're 30 years old, Smokey. You need to grow up. Of course, none of this needed to be public. Again, at any point you were thinking that during this video, don't worry, I thought the same. I'm tired of talking about this. But Smokey and Daft really seemed like they wanted me to be on.
I love this photo of DaftPina. It makes him look like a fucking psychopath, my dude. It makes him look like a fucking creep. This is the dude. This is the master manipulator of the Just Stop video, the situation with Mark and Veronica. That guy. This dude that has the hairline of the perfect cut that makes it look like an M. This guy. This is the dude that we're finally getting towards. We are now at the part where DaftPina's involvement is talked about. And honestly, DaftPina, you are the most interesting person throughout this entire story. Like, I know I like the idea of Smokey being a complete psycho bitch, but there's something about you, DaftPina, that piques my interest more than anybody in this story. I don't know why, but there's something about you. There's something about you that just niggles at the back, like just a little bit of. It's like you're digging in the back of my head, DaftPina. There's something about you. I can't say yet, but there's something about you that makes me. After this part and the things I've heard and read and all these things, Daft, you have my attention now. You have my attention.
Honest. So how can I do that without telling you the full story? Notice how at no point in this video was DaftPina ever mentioned. DaftPina is a leech who attaches himself to any molecule of drama he can find himself. I know for a fact he's currently going around to people, some of which I used to be good friends with, to get them to speak out about me.
Niggles. It's a fucking word. It's a fucking word.
Claiming I was an abuser. This all stemming from Smokey's original tweet. Everybody knows at this point, but it bears repeating. Daft is never to be trusted. He's found himself in controversy after controversy, and nobody respects him. Someone who relies on 18-year-olds to do his dirty work for him, while he sits in the background puppeting everything, while also never acknowledging this publicly until he's ready to make a video. In the first live stream Just Stop went to discuss this video, he very much underplays Daft's involvement, even saying that if they were to talk to Mark in private, that he would consider taking down the video. Everybody who watched that stream could agree that Just Stop came off incredibly unconfident about the video he had just uploaded.
Shout out to Spurg Alert. Shout out to Doc on the fucking radio. These motherfuckers. I still can't believe that Tomato Man got Just Stop on. I'm still in shock that happened. And it happened on Spurg Alert. That is the most perfect place for that to take place. Because it was a Spurg situation. This was the most perfect venue for the Just Stop thing. Is on Spurg Alert. Because honest to Christ. This was the perfect venue for this entire situation to unfold.
I'm curious.
Like I said, I just brought him on to help me with the call and ask questions. Once or twice I asked for his input. That's about it.
Once or twice? On what? Input on what? I'm curious.
Mostly just like, showing the video to him and such.
Okay.
Daft and others would also add stories from people we talked to that couldn't be evaluated as anything more than hearsay, as they had no proof, and when I would try to say as much in the script, he'd stop me and go, "Don't say it like that. People will deconstruct and focus on it if you do." He wanted me to use sneaky language again, so in the end I cut them out entirely, and for bits that I didn't remove, I made sure to ask follow-up questions to get evidence of dates and such.
That night, Mark would ask...
But the thing is, and this is what I said when I was covering it with Matt Pitt, the video where Just Stop kind of like tells everybody that DaftPina was massively involved in this whole video, a little bit more than what he let on initially. There were so many red flags of how DaftPina was trying to move this video into the direction that he wanted, that Just Stop shouldn't have made the video in the first place. And I know that he has renounced the video, he took it down and everything. But the thing is that there's a lot of points where he goes, I started to see why DaftPina did this. DaftPina told me to do that. DaftPina told me how to word it this way to be a little sneaky. DaftPina manipulated the call to potentially try and get a recording with Mark's permission without him knowing he gave permission. All this other shit that just screamed red flags. It doesn't make any sense to me Why just stop? I understand he's your friend for a long period of time, and DaftPina's helped you out through a lot. But even if a good friend of mine came to me with all this circumstantial evidence and information and then kept using sneaky language to try and push the video in the direction that they wanted it to go, I would sit back and go, dude, that's too much. Like that's too much. And what you're doing is adding a lot of non-confirmed information to this for your own selfish needs. And to be honest, Matt Pitt and Tomato Man were right. DaftPina fucking manipulated the whole situation to what he wanted it to be, because DaftPina has an issue with Veronica that Veronica talks about soon.
Just Stop if he could call, to which Just Stop would say that he's too tired and that he would speak only in text. Rightfully, Mark would point out how wrong it was, that he would rather go on and spend hours on a live stream than talking directly to the person he had made this video about. I bring this up because the Just Stop who was talking to Mark at this point came off very different than the Just Stop we had seen in the live stream, saying that this video shouldn't be deleted because it highlights my abuse, and even tries turning the situation around on Mark, saying that he condones all of this because he wouldn't publicly say anything. Anytime I was publicly petty or joked about stuff, Mark was always the person to tell me to stop, that all I was doing was making more enemies, which he was right about. A couple of hours after this conversation with Just Stop, he completely switched his character, suddenly agreeing to call with Mark, and that he had made the video unlisted. A very different way of texting than he had just shown in that previous conversation. If you want to argue that showing these DMs are unethical, remember, Just Stop not only uploaded a video sharing Mark's private DMs that he had made clear he didn't want shown, but also exposed his marriage. What's evident here is that DaftPina was the one speaking through Just Stop to Mark. You can see on Hopeless Peaches' live stream that Just Stop admitted to her that DaftPina was advising Just Stop not only to not take down the video, but also not call Mark.
Man, I wonder why DaftPina didn't want that video down. I wonder why DaftPina would tell Just Stop not to call Mark, the subject of the video. Guys, I wonder why. I wonder why that's the case. Man, it's gonna fuck my brain up forever to never know the reason why. Oh wait, the reason was to control the narrative still and have Just Stop get thrown under the fucking bus on DaftPina's behalf. That is how it comes across, and to be honest, that is what those DMs show.
We had a call with Braxton today, and I asked if I was allowed to share this, so he said yes, I will. DaftPina, after this stream, and after it, I don't know whether Crow was involved, they're all telling Just Stop to 1, not join this live stream, 2, not call Mark, and 3, keep the video up.
Mark has been friends with DaftPina since he was 16, and was accustomed to his way of writing, even telling Just Stop to say hi to Daft for him, as he knew that Daft was the one telling him what to say. Furthermore, in the original video, Just Stop claims that he and Daft and Crowy were just concerned friends, yet Daft has not once reached out to Mark about this, before or after the video being posted. Also, the narrative presented in that video was that Mark was approached by numerous friends about me. This is not true. The only people who had ever spoken to Mark about this was Just Stop, not his friend, Crowy, somebody who Mark had last called a full year before the interrogation, Smokey, somebody who had threatened and then openly shared his private DMs after agreeing that she wouldn't, and then had spread a narrative that I was falsely accusing somebody of sexual assault based on an out-of-context DM from him, and DaftPina, who's so good of a friend that he never once reached out to Mark about this, even saying to him that he wasn't working on a video about me, and told Just Stop not to take down the video, which Mark had asked him to. Great.
Snake vibes. We're gonna snake vibes. Snake. You see this? It's a snake. It's a snake. The most venomous snake in the world. This right here. It's a snake. Look at this. Look at that. That's snake right there. That's DaftPina. That's the community ripping DaftPina apart. So right there, very snake. Slippery little snake, DaftPina. Snake.
Friends. It's no wonder he didn't listen to them. This is manipulation. DaftPina is not only manipulating an 18-year-old who he considers a friend, but manipulating his own audience by giving them a one-sided story without contacting me for what I have to say, yet prides himself on informing the public of the truth.
People have said it for a while, and I've tried to shrug it off or even defend him, but I can't deny it. Daft is a toxic person. It's something I've rejected for a while, but it's true. He really, at least from my perspective, hasn't changed much since the days of the Jaden face reveal. He's just gotten better at hiding it publicly and letting other people fight his battles, like he tried to do with me by including a massive section on Sunny. He wants to pretend he's better than all these people that talk about him, acting like he doesn't care, but he does.
This is a man who will justify needing to give pedophiles and groomers a platform to explain their side. Yet where was my...
There's a lot of hypocrisies that come out of DaftPina. Daft, listen, brother. You pique my interest more than anybody recently. Just know, DaftPina. You're on my radar now, dude. You're on my radar.
My message, Daft. Do you take shit-talking as a worse crime than pedophilia or grooming of minors? Oh, you don't like that correlation? Sorry, I only learned it from you. See, you love handling things and framing them as worst as possible to fit this narrative you want to try and spin. I found out that Daft was going to an artist, who Mark is paying to work on his pilot, telling them that I was mocking them and their art. This would be corroborated by Strawberry Mage. I know it was you. Daft first talks to them about me mocking their art. The next question going into, why do you think Veronica hates them? You see how things are made as extreme as possible? You want to know what I did, what crime I committed? I would talk to my friends in a private DM that I didn't like how this artist would draw hands and certain features in their personal artwork. I want to make it clear that anytime that this was done on something that Mark was paying them for, I always chimed in and gave my notes, and in multiple occasions redrew the hands and poses myself, even publicly telling them that I would prefer their old designs over their new ones when they would ask for feedback. This isn't a case of me telling somebody that I love their art and the way that they draw hands, and then saying the opposite behind their back. Shit talking, yes. But how this turned into me hating them and asking them why if I had grievances about their art, I wouldn't come to them personally with my critiques is such an exaggerated place to take this. Clearly done by Daft to make minor events seem as massive as possible. Because everybody loves getting unsolicited advice about art they drew for fun. Where I take my comments in private DMs to my close friends, including you, Strawberry Mage, is between me and them. But you know, maybe I should have known better after experiencing Smokey. Somebody you had once said you never wanted to be like yourself, even describing them as obsessive and stalkerish. Remember when you said Mick and Smokey were bad people and that you were glad that I cut them off? I did bad things here, that's without question. But ever since March of 2022, I've done nothing but try and move past the worst time in my life and improve myself. Being 11 months sober of alcohol today, getting rid of people who enabled my bad habits and facilitated my addictions. Currently, I'm in the process of writing out my own wrongdoings and my past experiences with people, in preparation to apologizing to those me and my sponsor saw fit. All I've tried to do here is be honest, take accountability, and work on myself like I've been needing to for years. And Daft, somebody who you'd think with the content he creates would want something like this to be a result of bad actions, for me to grow and reflect, feels like this isn't capable without him having to make some kind of video, not knowing the growth I've been making, because he'd rather turn a blind eye and not ask me for my side. I find it funny how Daft, somebody not new to finding himself in controversies, such as Jaden faking her mental illness, or that someone should quit art just because he thinks that they're not improving fast enough.
Her art is terrible. And if I was 22 like her, I think I'd just stop drawing and try a new hobby.
Or going as far as doxing somebody and using the excuse of their Facebook account was already public. He acts like he can move on from his past mistakes through the most minimal effort possible, but no one else can without his input. You have a serious hero complex, and it's going to continue to bite you in the ass until you stop and realize you aren't the good person you think you are. Yet he is much more concerned about twisting this information as much as possible, where every situation has a supervillain to talk about, while Daft, the morally superior hero, comes in and saves the day and speaks for the victims around the world. I mean, this was all perfect for him. He already didn't like me. Again, he never bothered to reach out to me about what progress I'd been making. You want to know what I did to Daft that made him hate me so much?
I wonder what the horrible thing is that Veronica did to make DaftPina, a guy with over 200K subscribers on YouTube, who has commentary style videos. What did Veronica do to piss off DaftPina? What did Veronica do to piss off Daft? I wonder what it is. It has to be the most fuck thing ever to try and make a video on somebody that's trying to better themselves. I wonder, I wonder what has to be said here.
I'm a cuck private to friends back in 2020. Those who joked along and agreed. After having a falling out with one of them, they would decide to go to Daft themselves and tell him what I had said. To which he approached me about this. I never denied it and told him that the person that he got this from had joined in too. The worst I'd done to Daft since was send him this image. Really seemed to ruffle his feathers. What's the matter, Daft? Did you want to be Quagmire? Well, too bad. You'll always be Brian. Initially, I didn't know what would come of all this stuff becoming.
Called him a cocksucker and sent him a photo of Family Guy. That is maybe the worst thing that Veronica could do to DaftPina according to this situation. DaftPina apparently was so offended, again, based on Veronica's side of things, that a photo of Brian and Quagmire, plus calling him a cocksucker at a party, is enough to manipulate a video based on her and use Just Stop as a proxy to do it. That's amazing.
Public. But after everything is said and done, I'm glad that it all happened. It allowed me to further look back at things I was doing and the people that I was engaging with on a daily basis, and just how selfish I can get. It only makes me happier and appreciate how much better my life has become since getting away from Mick, Smokey, and alcohol. So really, the takeaway from all of this is that everybody shit talks and everybody is shitty. Mick, Smokey, Daft, and me. And within the manner of handling justice, you all showed your true colors. But I wouldn't change anything. If it weren't for enduring Smokey's obsessive behavior and a drunk like Mick, or hitting an emotional bottom for what I did to Mark, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And really, the only person here out of us four who has taken accountability is me. Clearly, you wouldn't have known what this was like, because Smokey picked and chose what they wanted to share. The greatest conclusion to this whole ordeal that makes me the happiest to know that I can finally do is to apologize to Chris for how I treated him during and after our relationship. None of this was necessary, and I don't want to hear anything from you, Smokey, about things not needing to go public. Because this is what you wanted, Smokey. And even your little friend Daft said this needed to be public. But this is where you need to make a decision, Natalie. Are you going to take accountability for what you did? Like falsely accusing me of claiming sexual assault, lying to Mark about spreading his private information, gaslighting him and whoever else about these events and how they occurred? Or are you going to continue to blame all your problems on one person? You can't use me as a scapegoat forever. You need to be accountable for your actions. Everybody around you calls you immature and excuses your behavior by saying that you need to grow up. But that'll never happen if you can't admit that you've done something wrong yourself. This is the first and only time I'm addressing any of this publicly. We all need to move on from this. It's been
I know. It took a while. We got through that, though. We got through it. I know. That took a while. It took 3 fucking hours to get through that video. I know. But this is the thing. And my final recollection on things, right? DaftPina, behind the scenes, gaslighting Just Stop into thinking that this was the correct video to make because he didn't like Sonny, and now we learn he didn't like Veronica, and proceeded to be there through every step of the video's creation, all the way through, all because he just didn't like Veronica and wanted to make this public, but was too much of a pussy to put it on his own channel. Because in my opinion, and how I look at it, is that DaftPina was going to get the blowback hard if he posted that on his own channel. That is how I look at the DaftPina section of this, is that he bitched out and had someone else do his dirty work. DaftPina is a little bit of a snake. And all the things I've learned about DaftPina scream snake. Snaky little fuck. That is what it comes across as. Smokey, you are a psychopathic bitch that makes up lies about people because you are uncomfortable with yourself and you can't find love because your idea of love is so warped that if somebody has sex with you, you immediately assume that they are going to be in love with you. You need to work on yourself, bitch. And Mick, quit being a simp and being a fucking weirdo to people, especially the people that you quote unquote love. If anything, it's more of an obsession than anything else. That's how you come across, Mick, as an obsessed freak. That is what you come across as, according to the situations that Veronica has presented. Mark and Veronica have had their ups and downs. Things have happened that most people wouldn't forgive, but Mark forgave her, and she's forgiven herself, and they are happy together. They're fucking married. They're building a life together. And if you still have an issue with how Veronica and Mark got together, you're just uncomfortable with the fact that somebody could work through something that you couldn't, or that you think you can't in the future. That is how I look at you, and it's sad. It's sad to look at that. I think at the end of the day, DaftPina needs to stop being a fucking snake behind the scenes. Mick needs to leave Veronica the fuck alone and work on himself. Get some therapy. And Smokey needs to be put on the streets of LA as a homeless person at this point, because she fucking acts like a crazy person on Skid Row. That's what she comes across as to me. A crazy person that should be living on Skid Row. But hey, you know what? That might be too harsh to say, but realistically, it's looking like that's what you deserve. So please, Smokey, fuck off, bitch. FPS Diesel, I have zero respect for commentary YouTubers. They use real people suffering for clicks and make money off the video. Shut the fuck up, Diesel. Shut the fuck up, Diesel. Shut the fuck up, Diesel. Imagine being a professional orbiter. I would fucking kill myself if I was known as like a professional orbiter. I would actually kill myself, like unironically. She does belong on the streets. Let's see here. I want to see who is live right now. I don't think I'm going to do calls. I think I'm going to back out. I think I'm going to back out of that. But I want to say thank you to everybody that came out today, and thank you for the generous donations as well. It's been 3 fucking hours. I'm tapping out. I think I'm going to send you over to Review Tech USA's stream. Rich. I like Rich. He's a good guy. And I think Rich would be a good person to go check out. Let's see here. RTU. Oh, God damn it. What is the name of this? The Thirst. Hey, there we are. Redirect privileges needed. God damn it. I can't send you over to Review Tech USA shit. All right, hold on.
Can't watch DSP.
All right, I'm just gonna post it all here. Yep, go over to Rich. Tell Rich I said hi. Let him know it's a Chris raid. Let him know. Let him know we're there. But thank you all for watching today. Genuinely appreciate it. Go over to Rich. Tell him I said hi. Him going over DSP reacts. Obviously, making fun of DSP is a lot of fun. So make sure you guys go over there, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel here if you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for coming out, guys.